Chapter 4:16. The Dark Knight Flowing Light Sword and the Dark Knight's spiritual robe were returned to Gu Fei amidst the crowd's scolding. Everyone couldn't bear to see Fireball being so impressive. If he was so cool and all the girls were taken by him, then what were they supposed to do? Although there was no other woman here other than the vast expanse of grass, these wretched guys were born to pick up girls. There were no girls on the street, but there were girls in their hearts. The remaining members of the robbers were ignored at this time. They didn't dare to have any other thoughts, so they quickly turned around and ran for their lives. However, as soon as they got out of the street, they started screaming. Gu Fei and the others looked over and saw people flying from the remnants of the robbers. Not long after, the crowd was torn apart, and a Grand Master of Combat was waving his fists and legs in the middle. Those guys couldn't care less about unity at this time. They each chose a direction and ran for their lives. 100th Era Jingluan didn't chase after them. He looked over at the street and walked over. We're on the same side. Gu Fei saw that a few people seemed to have the intention to shoot arrows, so he quickly shouted. Everyone put down their bows and looked at 100th Era Jingluan running over. He asked Gu Fei, "Where's Jian Nanyu?" He ran away. Gu Fei was helpless. Hurry up and chase after him. 100th Era Jingluan said. I don't know where he went, Gu Fei said as he looked at the immortals in the bushes. He didn't know if they had any information. I didn't see him. Everyone shook their heads. They also received the final information from their brothers and rushed here. However, they left a bit later than Jian Nanyu and the others, so they didn't bump into them. It wasn't easy to find people in such an unfamiliar place. They were lucky to bump into Jian Nanyu the first time. Now that Jian Nanyu was nowhere to be found, Gu Fei felt helpless. On the other hand, Sakurazuka Tsukuzi and his gang of brothers, who usually had the indomitable spirit of pestering girls, did not have any impatience towards this at all. Gu Fei didn't want to trouble them anymore, but they had already waved their arms and said, "Brothers, let's go. We're going to find them." How are you? Gu Fei asked the Encyclopedia of Wisdom. Of course, he was referring to the fact that he had been thrown to another street. I'm fine. Encyclopedic Classic said, it's just that the wall over there is a little high. It was a little embarrassing. Centurion was thrown to the next street by the whirlwind slash, but he was not injured. He wanted to come back and continue the chase, but he did not expect that the buildings on both sides of the street were of different heights. One side was a bungalow, while the other side was a small loft. No matter how skilled the 100 Lives strategist was, he could not run to such a height. Helpless, he could only take a detour like a commoner. Jian Nanyu was let go, but he managed to stop the remaining members of the robbers. It could be considered as him venting his anger a little. While the two were talking, the people from the Immortal Society had already left to look for Fireball. Only Fireball was still rubbing against Gu Fei. Brother Zui, where did you get those 2 items? Of course, Gu Fei would not hide anything. In fact, they were just strolling around. It was very easy. As the 3 of them strolled around, Gu Fei told Fireball the details of the quest chain from beginning to end. Quest chain. Fireball was a little frustrated. It was officially announced that the quest chain was made up of several random quests, and the probability of 2 identical quest chains happening was extremely low. Obviously, Fireball could not do anything about it. So, Gu Fei turned around and asked Fireball, how many PK points do you have? Fireball glanced at it and was shocked by himself, 18. How could he, Fireball, be able to do that? He never dreamed that he would have such close contact with PK points. Gu Fei patted him on the shoulder. Take care. Brother Zui, you're messing with me again. Fireball wanted to cry but had no tears. At this moment, he was very regretful that he had played that cool back then. With 18 PK points, it would naturally take 36 hours to clear it. PK quest. Fireball was not a top player, so he did not have the guts to do that. Ask for help from his guild brothers? Those perverted men were hitting him when he was down. He should have asked them for help. After some deliberation, Fireball could only look at Gu Fei pitifully. Of course, Gu Fei was not that disloyal. He patted the terrified Fireball and said, "When this is over, I'll clear it for you." Fireball was naturally very touched. He could not help but move closer to Gu Fei. "Then I'll follow you for now." With Fireball's low movement speed, following Gu Fei was really a burden. However, Gu Fei also knew that it was very dangerous to have 18 PK points. Letting Fireball follow him could also protect him. Moreover, there was still no news from Jian Nanyu. It was better to wait for news before hurrying on. Just as he was thinking about the news, Han family young master sent a message in the mercenary channel. "Assassin, how's it going?" "He got away." Gu Fei was regretful. It had been some time since Gu Fei said he found Jian Nanyu. Jian Nanyu had not revived in the warrior camp. Han family young master guessed that Gu Fei did not succeed. However, Gu Fei's failure was obviously more surprising than his success. Han family young master hurriedly asked, "What happened?" "Another group of robbers. I don't know if they are Jian Nanyu's accomplices, but they suddenly interfered." Gu Fei was very regretful. "Oh, then what about now?" "Continue looking." Gu Fei replied. "Go do what you need to do." Han family young master ended the call. The other members of Child Elite Group could naturally see the conversation in the channel. Gu Fei actually failed to take down Jian Nanyu. Everyone was amazed. Yutian Shinming ran back from his sniping spot and looked at Han family young master. "How long are we going to waste?" Han family young master ignored him. He looked at the time and muttered, "Brother Yu." Just as he said these two words, a familiar figure walked out from a cluster of white light in the warrior camp. "Brother Yu, you're finally back." Han family young master finished his sentence. However, Brother Yu did not answer. He quickly took out his little notebook from his pocket and stood on the spot, quickly writing something. The four of them seemed to know what he was doing. No one went forward to disturb him. Brother Yu wrote for a while, then let out a long sigh. He put away his pen and stared at the notebook. He smiled at the four of them. "I shouldn't have remembered wrongly." Brother Yu had suddenly gone offline to gather information, but of course, he could not bring the information he had gathered in real life into the game. Brother Yu could only forcefully memorize it. Once he entered the game, he quickly wrote it down in his notebook while his memory was still fresh. "Did you find out everything?" Han family young master asked. "Yes." Brother Yu nodded his head in enjoyment. This was his exclusive Brother Yu moment. He waved the notebook in front of everyone and said, "Simple information on the top 20 guilds in Linshui City is here." "Wow, you can remember the information on the top 20 guilds. Brother Yu, you're a genius." Yutian Shinming affirmed Brother Yu's achievements. "You're flattering me." Brother Yu immediately said modestly. "Tell me the names of the guild leaders." Han family young master said. Brother Yu read them out one by one. Han family young master quickly tested them one by one. When he finished, he angrily scolded, "None of them turned on the friend switch." Everyone shrugged their shoulders. Those who could establish guilds were all experts in the main city. Naturally, the friend switch couldn't be turned on casually. Otherwise, countless noobs would add you as a friend and crazily shout, "Brother, take me. Brother, give me some money. Go to the mailbox." Han family young master waved his hand. "You're preparing." When Han family young master said that he needed these things, everyone did not know his intentions. This kind of information could be casually asked on the road, but the amount of information that Han family young master needed was too large. Ordinary players could basically say the simple information on 2 or 3 of the biggest guilds. Who would remember 20 guilds? Sword Demon suggested going to the guild building to make a simple copy. This method was definitely accurate, but it would take time to get to the guild building. Brother Yu simply went offline and went to the forums to gather information. After all, this warrior camp was a safe offline area, so it was very convenient to come and go. In such a short time, Brother Yu had already gathered information on 20 guilds. His efficiency could not be said to be low. At this moment, Han family young master couldn't add these guild leaders as a friend and said that he wanted to go to the mailbox. Everyone guessed that he had something to discuss with these 20 people. Arriving at the mailbox, Han family young master waved his pen and quickly completed a letter. He casually handed it to the person beside him and said, "Copy it." The 4 people's heads moved closer to take a look. After reading, they couldn't help but exclaim, "Wow, too vicious. Do you want us to live?" The content of the letter was to inform these 20 guilds that the cleric of Linshui City's Jian Nanyu possessed a resurrection-type skill. More importantly, Han family young master also told them that Green Narrow Guild had already started to fight for this equipment. If the first piece of information wasn't bewitching enough, then the second piece of information cut into the guild's weak spot. This kind of exquisite item would benefit any guild's strength. At this moment, even if some guilds did not have the despicable intention of snatching other people's equipment, they would definitely come out to obstruct their competitors when they knew that there was a competitor making a move. After all this, the main focus was naturally on the fight for the staff. You want all the guilds in Linshui City to be annihilated. Everyone exclaimed in admiration at Han family young master's generosity. I don't know what will happen to the guilds, but if Jian Nanyu and his gang don't die, then it's too unreasonable. Han family young master replied calmly. After that, he urged everyone, make more copies. I want to send this news to all the core members of each guild other than the guild leader. After all, letters were different from short messages. Very few people would immediately run to the mailbox to read the system's notification. Han family young master had long been prepared for this, so he asked Brother Yu to gather more information about the guilds. Just 2 or 3 guilds might not be able to stir up any trouble. Right now, there were a total of 20 guilds with dozens of guild core members receiving the same letter. Han family young master did not believe that there wasn't a single person who happened to be near the mailbox, so he came to take a look. Furthermore, he had included a gold coin in every letter. This item was attached to the mail, so the system would also give a notification. What was even more amazing was that it would only say that there was a gold coin in the letter, but not the exact amount. Han family young master believed that this gold coin letter would be able to arouse the curiosity of many people. Butterfly Knot, Student Jian Nanyu. I want to pray for you. Chapter 4:17. What are we going to do now? Yutian Shinming asked after seeing that the Han family young master had finished sending the letter. Watch the show. Han family young master said. As soon as he finished speaking, a player hurriedly walked out of a system shop and arrived next to the mailbox. After the 6 gave way to him, he opened the mailbox and took out a letter. He fumbled around inside the mailbox, but didn't find anything. He then tore open the letter and a gold coin immediately rolled out. The player was stunned for a moment before cursing, "Fuck." He picked up the gold coin from the ground and took out the letter. The 5 of them looked at each other and thought, what a coincidence. I got to see a live broadcast of someone receiving this letter. The player opened the letter and glanced at it. His expression immediately changed and he hurriedly ran back to the shop he just came out from. Not long after, he walked out with the other 2. The letter was currently in the hands of the other 2. The 2 of them stared at it intently with just a few sentences. Who sent it? The 2 of them asked the person who had received the letter. I don't know. It was sent anonymously. Letters could be sent anonymously in the game. However, this also meant that they wouldn't be able to receive a reply from the other party. The reply would definitely need to be filled in with the player's ID before it would be delivered. Let's notify the guild leader. Okay. The recipient stood still and sent the message. Not long after, he said in surprise, the guild leader said that he also received a letter with a gold coin. Could it be the same as mine? Who could it be? I don't know. Let's first find some people to pay attention to Green Narrow Guild's movements. The three of them said as they left. How many people are in the city? The last thing the five of them heard was this sentence. Han family young master was startled after hearing this sentence. He then said, I forgot something. What is it? Everyone looked at him. Linshui City is a godforsaken place. It's not easy to gather people. Those who go out to train can only come back when there's a ship. Even if we spread the news to the other guilds, they won't be able to gather many people in a short period of time. Han family young master said. At least a little. Yutian Shinming said. A lot less, said Brother Yu. A player's main lifestyle was to grind for levels and loot. The leveling areas were the main areas of activity. There weren't many players in the city. That brat Jian Nanyu, he didn't choose such a main city on purpose, did he? Han family young master said. No, he was born here, said Brother Yu. He and Jian Nanyu were old acquaintances and had added each other as friends long ago. Oh, then he's lucky. Han family young master said. What about us now? Yutian Shinming asked the same question he had asked before. I'm just taking a stroll around the city. I'm here to check up on the guild's operations in Waterside City. Han family young master said. Jian Nanyu and the others split up and went back and forth in the city. Their style of doing things was very similar. After changing into a new set of equipment, they would walk on the street with their heads down, not coming into contact with anyone. Splitting up was indeed an effective plan. Finding a person in such a large main city was easier said than done. Thinking back to the time when Upstream and Unchung Mutsu were struggling to find Gu Fei, one could imagine how difficult this task was. The reason they had been discovered so quickly was because the seven of them were too big of a target. Yu Jiannan regretted not splitting up immediately. Fortunately, they did not suffer too great of a loss. In the end, only Huorini was sacrificed. However, he didn't know how the video mage was doing. Jian Nanyu was still worried for Gu Fei. In that situation, a normal player would have thought that Gu Fei wouldn't have been able to escape. Jian Nanyu was quite regretful that he didn't get to eat this fat sheep, but fell into someone else's pocket. I hope he doesn't drop anything when he dies. Jian Nanyu prayed for Gu Fei like this. He didn't know how Gu Fei would feel if he found out. Jian Nanyu had a safe journey and arrived at the east gate of Waterside City. This wasn't the closest gate to their rendezvous point, but he didn't have the time to care about the distance. Naturally, he would take the safest route. Soon, he was close to the gate. Jian Nanyu was cautious and didn't move forward rashly. He glanced at the gate and couldn't help but complain in his heart. There were already people from Green Narrow Guild guarding the gate. They were carefully observing the players entering and exiting the city. If he wanted to sneak out. Jian Nanyu didn't know if they recognized him. It would be fine if they didn't, but if they recognized him, they definitely wouldn't let him pass so easily. Jian Nanyu, who was considered a resourceful person, couldn't think of a way. He contacted his other guild members and found out that they were all at the gate. However, apart from Blackwater, they were all stuck here. Blackwater was the only one who swaggered out of the city after entering stealth. Which gate are you guys at? Jian Nanyu asked everyone. I'm at the south gate. I'm at the north gate. I'm at the west gate. I'm at the west gate too. Ah, you're at the west gate too. Where are you? Why don't I see you? I don't see you either. From this, it could be seen that their disguise was very successful. They couldn't even find their own people, let alone other strangers. Let's find a gate to meet up with. Jian Nanyu said helplessly. It's too risky to go out like this. Which gate? Let's go to Dao Xiangmu's place. Dao Xiangmu was at the west gate. Thus, the few of them began to carefully move in that direction. From time to time, the people from Green Narrow Guild would run past them in groups of 2s and 3s. Every time they ran past them, they would break out in a cold sweat. However, they didn't expose themselves. Jian Nan Yu and the others were still rejoicing in their hearts. However, they didn't know that their actions had given the Han family young master time to execute his gold letter plan. Out of the 20 guilds in Waterside City, a total of 17 responded immediately after receiving the gold letter. The ones who received the letter were either the guild leader or the core members of the guild. In short, the message had already been delivered. Out of the 17 guilds, 6 of them were relatively casual guilds. They weren't greedy and didn't take the news seriously. The remaining 11 guilds began to pay close attention to the matter. Just like what Han family young master and the others had seen at the mailbox, they immediately gathered people to investigate the situation. Green Narrow Guild had hundreds of people. Some were running around the city, some were guarding the city gates, and some were guarding the various safe zones. The Priest Academy, in particular, was heavily guarded. It was easy for people to notice them. As such, they concluded that the news was not fake. Although they were still suspicious of the source, they immediately issued a summon to the players on the leveling island. It took time to return by boat. Jian Nan Yu's group of 7 wandered around the city, giving them some time. As the enemy's people hurried back, they began to collect information on Jian Nan Yu's group. The more people there were, the more power they could muster. Green Narrow Guild might not be able to recognize all 7 of them, but now that they had spread the net so far, they only knew a little bit about the situation. Although they didn't exchange information with each other, the 7 of them were basically transparent. Each guild displayed their strengths. Those who recognized Flaming Cloak led their teams to search for this face, while those who recognized Dao Xiangmu searched for this face. Everyone split up, and the number of search parties in the city increased. The 7 of them vaguely sensed this situation. Jian Nan Yu immediately reminded everyone, the news might have already spread. Everyone, be extra careful. Fuck, how did it happen so quickly? I don't know. Jian Nan Yu couldn't figure it out. As a professional robber, Green Narrow Guild definitely wouldn't leak this kind of information. However, the players in the beach tavern shouldn't have let the news spread so quickly. Of course, Jian Nan Yu didn't expect Child Elite Group to give such information after the fact. Since the 7 of them sensed it, Green Narrow Shadow, the guild leader of Green Narrow Shadow, naturally sensed it too. How did the news spread so quickly? That was the first thought that flashed through his mind. From beginning to end, Painting Narrow Shadow saw the search teams from the 3 guilds, and he also saw the tacit expressions on the leaders' faces when they looked at him. He was certain that the other party's goal was the same as his. Hello, how are things on your side? Narrow Shadow called the members of the Priest Academy. This was the main battlefield that he had predicted. A lot of people suddenly came. There are people from all the big guilds. The players from the Priest Academy replied while wiping their sweat. In reality, the situation was getting tense. There were more and more guilds gathered here, and there wasn't enough space to stand. On the surface, no one said anything, but the obvious hostility between them scared the players who had just come online. They didn't know what to do and hurriedly went offline. Fuck, these guys are really cunning. Of course, Narrow Shadow knew that it wasn't easy to gather people in Waterside City. These guilds were probably short on manpower at this time, so they all gathered at the Priest Academy. They were determined to take advantage of the situation there. What do we do? The people from the Priest Academy were helpless. Wait, I'll be right there. Narrow Shadow sighed. Now that so many guilds had their eyes on this thing, it wasn't a good idea for everyone to just rush up and snatch it. It seemed like they needed to meet up and discuss this. Meanwhile, on Gu Fei's side, the people from Eternal Life in Flowers and Wandering Swords group of 7 didn't recognize each other at all. Now that they had split up, they didn't know each other even if they stood in front of them. Naturally, they wouldn't be able to find anything. On the other hand, the movements in Waterside City had already fallen into their eyes. Gu Fei, 100 Era's strategist, and a few other people from Eternal Life in Flowers just happened to meet up near the Priest Academy. When he saw the scene in the Priest Academy, Gu Fei's blood started to boil. Aya, it looks like they're going to kill someone, right? Even clerics can attract so much hate. 100 Era's strategist was astonished. It was indeed difficult for clerics to cause trouble. Hee, of course they will. Gu Fei smiled thoughtfully. Hey, what are you laughing at? Boundless Mang was extremely dissatisfied. I didn't mean to hint at you. Gu Fei wiped his sweat. It turned out that the cleric who could cause such a scene was standing next to him. However, the cleric that Gu Fei arrived at was indeed not Boundless Mang. These people don't seem to be from the same guild. With so many guilds guarding here, it's like they're waiting for a boss. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Butterfly Knot, will there be a battle royale in the next chapter? Won't there be? Won't there? Won't there? Chapter 418. I think they're really waiting to kill a boss. Boundless Mang suddenly said. Everyone looked at her. It's obvious that the news of someone reviving in the beach tavern has already spread. These people are obviously here to ask for advice. Boundless Mang said. Oh. Boundless Mang said tactfully, but everyone quickly understood what she meant. Gu Fei gave her a thumbs up, as expected of someone with experience. Not to mention Gu Fei and 100 Realm strategist, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and Fireball were also experienced players, so they didn't react as quickly as Boundless Mang. What do you mean? Boundless Mang stared at Gu Fei. Nothing, I'm just respecting the truth. Gu Fei said. Boundless Mang was speechless because this was indeed the truth. Back in Moonlit Night City, if she found a priest with a revival skill like this, she would definitely lead everyone to ask for advice. However, when she was at her peak, Dust Guild was the only guild that had a monopoly and no one dared to compete with them. It was definitely not like Waterside City, where the guilds gathered outside the Priest Academy. Boundless Mang counted, but she couldn't count them all. In any case, there were already 6 or 7 guilds. This scene seemed a bit familiar. Boundless Mang was slightly startled and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Back then, when she ambushed people to drop their equipment, it wasn't like this. But when she fell from grace and was hunted down, she was trapped in the Priest Academy. Many guilds raised their flags and squatted outside the academy, swearing to kill everyone. At that time, she didn't feel wronged at all. But now that she knew of Silvermoon's shameless actions, she couldn't help but feel a bit sour when she thought about it. So many people are here, where's the priest? Gu Fei muttered. Boundless Mang came back to her senses and said, they haven't found it yet. They're probably searching the entire city. As soon as they find it, they'll immediately send it over. Gu Fei thought for a moment and said, their intentions are very clear. There's no way Jian Nan Yu and the others don't know about it. Would they still bring the staff with them? There are people in the warehouse too. Mang replied. She noticed all of this because she had directed these processes before and was very familiar with them. Warehouse? Oh, I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is, right now, everyone is crouching in the Priest Academy waiting. What if he gives this equipment to someone else? Gu Fei said. Give it to someone else? Everyone was stunned. Clearly, the veterans of the game didn't approve of this plan. The trust between players in the game was often weak. Handing over such a valuable piece of equipment to someone else for safekeeping might very well become a ritual of severing ties. What's wrong? What's wrong with that? Obviously, Gu Fei didn't have a trust crisis like normal players did when he lent 2 pieces of super equipment to Fireball just to show off. Brother Zue. Fireball's face was full of a pitiful expression. Not everyone is as virtuous as I am, who would return your exquisite equipment without hesitation. If it were anyone else, like Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, they would definitely take the equipment and run. Fuck, how could that be? Tsubasa Sakaratsuka was filled with righteous indignation. It's not like it's a lurker's equipment, he said. Everyone looked at him with disdain. I think it's possible that they would do that, Gu Fei concluded in a serious tone. The experience of fighting with Jian Nanyo's group of 7 made him feel that their actions might be shameful, but their friendship was not fake. Moreover, they were a group of robbers, so they could be considered a business group. The resurrection staff was probably a collective property. It was just that a priest could use it, so it was normal for it to be transferred. After listening to Gu Fei's analysis, everyone felt that it made sense. Mang Mang added, there are even more people looking for them now, but there's no sign of them. I think they must have split up. Then who would the equipment be on? Fireball asked. A thief, I guess. Gu Fei guessed. Everyone nodded their heads. A thief had the stealth skill, so it was undoubtedly the easiest for them to avoid being hunted down. It was the safest to place a precious item on him. A thief in stealth, that's even harder to find. Tsubasa Sakaratsuka revealed a troubled expression. They wouldn't be able to recognize him even if he wasn't in stealth, let alone now that he was invisible. We don't have to find him. If we can predict their next move. Gu Fei said. Mang Mang glanced at the chaotic crowd outside the Priest Academy. With the current situation, it's impossible for them to stay in Waterside City. They must think of a way to leave. But Waterside City isn't a place where they can leave as they please. They must take a boat. However, it's impossible for them to take a boat at the docks because that's the territory of the big guilds. They can only use their own boat. Gu Fei said as he looked at Mang Mang Mang. They had taken this boat together before. It's like this. Mang 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 said to Tsubasa Sakaratsuka. Tell our brothers to leave the city and walk along the shore. If they find any straw huts, haystacks, don't overlook any places that can be covered. It's very likely that a boat is hidden underneath. Once you find a boat, send the coordinates over. Okay. Tsubasa Sakaratsuka repeatedly nodded his head. Tell everyone to be careful. Be on your guard against a thief in stealth. Gu Fei said. Understood. Tsubasa Sakaratsuka had been listening from the side. He had long since understood the meaning behind Nya Yan's words. He immediately sent a message to his brothers, telling them to go to the shore to find a boat. A place where things can be covered. The brothers of eternal life among the flowers began to display their wretched imaginations. Won't a pair of wild mandarin ducks be revealed after we open it like this? Wow, that's a possibility. Exciting. This is too exciting. Let's go. Their morale was immediately boosted. Tsubasa Sakaratsuka happily nodded his head and said, our brothers have already gone. At this time, Baisher Jingluan, who had been silent all this time, nudged Gu Fei and said, hey, our target seems to be Jian Nanyu. It's not this resurrection skill equipment, right? Immediately, the other three's gazes focused on Gu Fei. They thought to themselves, so you're also greedy at the sight of wealth. However, Gu Fei's expression was calm. Who said that my target is a skill equipment? This escape route was something that Jian Nanyu had to take. Finding the boat is equivalent to finding Jian Nanyu. I see. Baisher Jingluan nodded. But that skill equipment sounds very valuable. If it's convenient, let's drop it. Robbery? That's not a good idea. Gu Fei wiped the sweat off his forehead. Robbery. This seems to be the idea that you gave me at the beginning, right? Baisher Jingluan said. Really? Gu Fei thought about it and it seemed to be the case. In the beginning, he did suggest that Baisher Jingluan rob the robbery party. Later on, it was Brother Yu and the others who analyzed that there wasn't much profit to be made from robbing the party, so this proposal was abandoned. Looking at it now, Jian Nanyu's group still had some profit to be made. If that's the case, let's rob it if it's convenient. Gu Fei decided. If that's the case, we need to leave someone at the Thieves' Guild. Boundless Mang said. Why don't you go there? Gu Fei said to Baisher Jingluan. Only one of them could stay at the Thieves' Guild. This was because thieves knew how to go stealthily. Only the two of them could sense their auras. All right. Baisher Jingluan nodded his head cheerfully. Then let's also go outside the city to find a boat. Gu Fei said to the other three. Everyone nodded their heads. Afterwards, Baisher Jingluan went to the Thieves' Guild alone to set up an ambush, while Gu Fei, Fireball, and the other two headed out of Linshui City. On the way, Gu Fei sent a message to his brothers in the mercenary group. What are you guys busy with? Inspecting work. Han family young master replied. The five of them walked around the city and occasionally saw small teams searching everywhere. They felt that their hard work wasn't in vain and were very gratified. Their group movement attracted many suspicious gazes. However, no one rashly attacked them because everyone was sure that it wasn't these 5 people. Look, there are 5 people with the right profession. Is it them? The first person to discover them would always say this. Then, the second person would come to the conclusion after a closer look. No, it should be all men. There shouldn't be any women. Oh. Everyone looked at Han family young master in relief. Of course, this was all in the dark, so the 5 elite team members didn't know about it. After walking for a while, they finally arrived at the Priest Academy. There were even more people than when Gu Fei and the others stayed there. The leader of the Green Narrow Guild, Red-Green Narrow Shadow, was also there. He was nervously discussing with the other guild leaders who had just arrived. In their eyes, Wandering Sword's group was already a plate of fat meat on the dining table. It was inevitable that they would be eaten. The problem was, with so many pairs of chopsticks, who would be able to reach them? It would be a chaotic battle, and whoever picked them up would keep it. This method couldn't be said to be unfair, but the problem was that if they really did it, the people who got close to the priest would be killed before the priest died. This wasn't something that anyone wanted to see. Since the managers were all here, everyone decided to discuss a harmonious and unified method. Seeing this group of people with the mentality that they couldn't wait for everyone else to die, yet they still wanted to sit together and discuss in a pleasant manner, Han family young master sneered. What's wrong? Everyone hurriedly asked. Those who were familiar with Han family young master knew that although this guy was scheming, he wasn't the type to not show his emotions. When he smiled warmly, it meant that you were in trouble. When he smiled coldly, it meant that you made a mistake, and he was laughing at your idiocy. Let's go. Han family young master didn't have any interest in staying at the Priest Academy for another second. He called for them to leave. Where are we going? Everyone asked. We're going to walk around outside the city. Han family young master said. What's there to walk around outside the city? Everyone didn't understand. Linshui City is already in such a mess, how can Wandering Swords group survive? They're definitely thinking of a way to leave. Han family young master said. But can they still leave? Along the way, they looked at the city gates. As the players who went out to level up returned, the guards at the city gates became more and more full. There's always someone who can leave. Han family young master said. Who? Thieves. Butterfly Knot, who is the target? Who will answer? Chapter 419. Waterfront City West Gate. Finally, Jian Nanyu managed to move to this side without any mishap. Is everyone here? He asked the others in the channel. Yes. The other 5 replied. At this time, Jian Nanyu was still in a small alley. He peeked outside and only found the glue that was pretending to be a stall in the small street market on the street of the city gate. Glue had often set up stalls on the street near the city gate when he was still a beginner. He was able to put on a show and no one suspected anything. As for the other 4, Jian Nanyu scanned the area carefully but still couldn't find them. He was satisfied. He couldn't even recognize them, let alone those strangers. Danan, what do we do now? Do we charge out? The one who sent the message was Flaming Cloak. It's a little troublesome. There seems to be a lot more people at the city gate. Dao Xiangmu said. Jiannan Yu quickly realized the problem. Compared to when he went to the east gate, everyone had gathered again. With this delay, the number of people at the city gate had increased exponentially. Previously, Jiannan Yu was prepared to gather everyone's strength and charge out. As long as they killed all the enemies, they wouldn't know where they went. Jiannan Yu was originally confident. But now that the number of enemies had increased, not to mention killing all of them, even killing their way out was a problem. The channel was silent. How about this? Glue said, I'll lure them away and they'll find a chance to charge out. Let me do it. As a cleric, I can attract all their attention. Dao Xiangmu said. Everyone was silent. Dao Xiangmu's words weren't wrong. Glue would definitely not be able to attract all of the enemy's attention. Only a cleric would have a chance. However, the problem was that Glue was an archer and had an advantage in speed. There was a chance for him to escape, but if a cleric was exposed, he would definitely die. Then I'll go. No one spoke. Dao Xiangmu had made up his mind and was about to appear. Jiannan Yu suddenly sent a message, no one go. Why? Dao Xiangmu was puzzled. Jiannan Yu was never an emotional person. It's useless even if you lure them away. If you stand out, you'll be killed. How many steps can you take? Jiannan Yu said. Dao Xiangmu thought about it and agreed. How could someone without speed lure the enemies away? He would be killed before he could even take 2 steps. Then what do we do? Someone asked. Listen to me. Jiannan Yu already had a plan in mind. Good idea. After Jiannan Yu finished speaking, everyone slapped the table and cheered. At this moment, more than 10 guilds of Waterside City had gathered at the western city gate. Everyone was a team with perfect class composition, and they all wanted to occupy the best position under the city gate. The atmosphere was very incompatible, and they all looked at each other with fire in their eyes. They were waiting for the results of the negotiations between the presidents of the Priest Academy. If there was any disagreement, this place would immediately turn into a battlefield. At this moment, every team was preparing for battle, calculating what kind of methods they should use once the battle began. But at the same time, they did not forget another important mission: keep an eye on the players coming and going. The atmosphere was so tense that it was about to freeze. Everyone's palms were sweating as they gripped their weapons. Suddenly, on the street closest to the city gate, a priest rushed out in panic. At this moment, the eyes of the players below the city gates lit up. Is it him? Just as this trace of hesitation flashed in everyone's hearts, they saw an arrow fly out from the alley that the priest ran out from, and hit the priest's shoulder. The players below the city gate were already in an uproar, and they moved closer to the priest without any prior agreement. The priest's footsteps did not stop. He wanted to continue running, but a chain of fireballs chased after his footsteps and hit his back. At the same time, a homing arrow flew over. A white light flashed. But within the circle of light, an object fell down. With a bang, the object fell to the ground. When the white light dissipated, everyone could clearly see that it was a magic staff. Almost at the same time, an archer had already rushed out from the alley. He glanced at the approaching players, and hurriedly rushed towards the magic staff on the ground. But immediately after, a warrior valiantly rushed out and used charge to hit the archer's waist. The archer was sent flying with a whoosh. The warrior wanted to pick up the magic staff, but his movement was a bit too slow. The experts below the city gate had already reacted. Roaring angrily, the mage's spells and the archer's arrows flew out at the same time. With the magic staff as the center, the mages set the surroundings ablaze, while the archers fiercely shot at the warrior. How could the warrior take even half a step forward? In a panic, he retreated back into the alley. Quick, the magic staff. A shout came from who knew where. The various guilds' teams fiercely rushed forward. Those with greater speed had already surpassed the crowd, but when they were still a few steps away from the magic staff, flames immediately fell from the sky, turning them into flying ash. Everyone stopped in their tracks. At this moment, anyone who dared to pick up the magic staff would immediately become the target of everyone. After this pitiful player was sacrificed, everyone thought of this logic. For a moment, everyone looked at each other. The magic staff was just a few steps away from them, but no one dared to go and pick it up. Everyone was quickly discussing in their private chat channels what they should do. Some people had already reported the situation here to the guild leaders. The priest school was already in a mess. The guild leaders were still discussing the current situation, unable to find a suitable solution. Then, they saw a priest resurrect in the priest school. Before anyone could see clearly, the priest went offline with the white light of resurrection. While everyone was still in a daze, they received a report from the west gate: a priest has died, and a magic staff has been dropped. When the guild leaders heard this, they immediately led their members and rushed towards the west gate, understanding the situation and the details of the situation along the way. The magic staff is on the ground, no one dares to touch it. This was a good situation, but not a long-term solution. This was because the items on the ground would be refreshed when the time was up. And this time limit was only 5 minutes. From the priest school to the west gate, even the fastest person couldn't reach it in 5 minutes. In other words, before the guild leaders arrived with their people, someone had to pick up the magic staff. Otherwise, everyone would be drawing water with a sieve. At this moment, the guild leaders were considering the fastest possible situation. They all reminded their subordinates, look for opportunities to snatch the magic staff. Even if you can't get it, you must see who picked it up in that person's class. At the same time, the guards at each resurrection point were warned to be 120% vigilant. West Gate. The atmosphere was extremely tense. At this time, it had been half a minute since the magic staff had fallen to the ground. It seemed like no one was moving, but in reality, the people in the front row were moving forward in an extremely imperceptible way. Everyone wanted to enter a certain range, a distance where they could reach out and pick up the magic staff. That way, even if they died immediately, it would be worth it. Unless his luck was extremely bad, and his death just happened to drop the staff he had picked up. After a minute, everyone's intentions were exposed. At this time, they had actually shortened the distance by 1 step. This was a change that could be seen with the naked eye. The players in the back row were a little surprised. In their eyes, unknowingly, the players in the front row had actually opened up a distance between them by 1 step. Only now did they realize that the effect of many a little makes a mickle was truly terrifying. Someone suddenly rushed out from the front row. In reality, when everyone stood in a row, it was impossible to be at the same distance from the magic staff. Some people were slightly further away, while others were slightly closer. The person who attacked was the closest to the magic staff. He was only 2 steps away, a distance that could be reached with 1 step and a bend. He finally couldn't hold back and made the first move. He was fast. But others were faster than him. He was the closest to the magic staff, but someone was closer to him than he was to the magic staff. Chapter 420. On the shore of Waterside City, the Brothers of Eternal Life were treading on the waves and searching for grass. As a lurker, their movement speed was extremely fast. It was easy for them to find something as big as a boat, so their efficiency was extremely high. The 30 or so players circled around the shore of Waterside City in a clockwise direction. Not long after, they received the first report, coordinates XXX, a boat found. Just one. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka replied. I searched carefully. Nonsense. How could I not see such a big thing if there were 2? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka didn't receive any respect from his subordinates. Stay behind. Tsubasa Sakaratsuka said. Along the way, they specifically asked around about the private boats in Waterside City and confirmed that most of the boats here were the same. It wasn't that players didn't like to pursue individuality, but that ordinary people didn't know how to make a boat. These boats were all made by a shipping company in the city. This shipping company was actually a mercenary group. It was said that it was formed by a group of players who had knowledge in this field. This group of people seemed to have discovered this business opportunity not long after they were born in Waterside City and established a shipping company. As the game developed, their lineup also continuously expanded. No one knew the standard of the players in the group. In short, the people in the shipping company were relatively wealthy. After all, Waterside City was a monopoly organization. According to the shipping company, this type of boat that could carry 5 people was the limit of the tools and materials that could be found in the game. Therefore, the private boats owned by players could only be smaller than this. It was impossible for them to be larger. From this, it could be seen that if Jian Nanyu and the others wanted to go on a road trip out of Waterside City, one boat definitely wouldn't be enough. They needed 2, which was why Tsubasa Sakaratsuka confirmed that there was only one boat. Although they knew that Jian Nanyu and the others needed 2 boats to leave together, they didn't dare to confirm that they would park their boats together. Therefore, they could only leave people at the places where the boats were found. In the end, as the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th reports came in, Gu Fei and the others realized that they might not have enough manpower. Currently, every main city in the game had a population of several hundred thousand. Waterside City was no exception. In Linshui City, having a private boat was a way to display one's status. Some experts, pretentious criminals, or rich people liked to own a private boat to keep up appearances. Legend has it that driving one's own boat and carrying a beauty on the water was the highest goal of picking up girls in Linshui City. This was the same logic as driving a small car to chase after beauties in real life. If the boat was rented or borrowed, or if it was simply a system ferry similar to a public bus, then the grade of the boat would drop by a lot. Due to all these reasons, the number of players in Linshui City who owned a private boat wasn't high, but it wasn't low either. The 30 or so people under Tsubasa Sakaratsuka's command were quickly annihilated after they were sent out. At this time, each of them had discovered a boat and were guarding it according to Tsubasa Sakaratsuka's instructions. However, there was still a large area along the water that had yet to be explored. How do we do this? Tsubasa Sakaratsuka was worried. He looked towards Gu Fei and Boundless Mang, the 2 people who planned this operation. Gu Fei thought for a moment before saying, "Let's have our brothers take a closer look at the boats we found. Maybe some people will put some sort of mark on their own boat. If they discover that it's clearly not Tsubasa Azuma's, then don't guard it." What are the names of Tsubasa Azuma's group? Tsubasa Sakaratsuka asked. This question stumped Gu Fei. He only knew Tsubasa Azuma, so he hurriedly asked Brother Yu. Brother Yu lived up to his reputation as an intelligence-gathering expert. That day, when he suspected that the remaining members of Wandering Sword's group of 7 were the characters that had disappeared from the top 10 in the recent update, he immediately went to investigate the members of the top 10 one by one. Tsubasa Azuma's group of 7, Warrior Tsubasa Azuma, Thief Blackwater, Sorcerer Flaming Jacket, Archer Glue, Priest Inakamu, Paladin Invincible Lucky Star, and the other priest was not a member of the top 10. Gu Fei told the results to Tsubasa Sakaratsuka. He was also quite regretful. There's still one person we don't know. Sigh, there's nothing we can do. Let's have our brothers search like this for now. After Tsubasa Sakaratsuka gave the order, the 30 or so people got busy again. After a careful investigation, they discovered that there were players who had carved their names on the boats. Their names were not on the boats of the 6, so no one paid any attention to them. Unfortunately, only half of the players used the simple method of carving their names. The other half also made marks, but they used drawing to express themselves. They looked like scribbles, making it hard for people to identify them. Naturally, they couldn't give up on guarding the boats. However, they could finally split up some people to continue working. The remaining people were also arranged to move around as much as possible. They just needed to keep the boats that they found within the range of their eyes. "Let's hurry up," Boundless Mang said. "The more people we have, the more power we have." "Brother Zui, you can't just leave me here," Fireball cried. Along the way, there were actually people who received his quest to arrest him. Fortunately, Gu Fei was there to deal with them. After a few exchanges, the other party felt that they were no match for him and left. If Gu Fei wasn't there, Fireball would have already been trapped in the water dungeon. "Okay, come with me," Gu Fei said. As they spoke, the four of them finally arrived at the city gate. There were actually no strong players from many guilds here, which surprised them. "Looks like Blade has already left the city. We need to hurry," Gu Fei said. Fireball saw the situation and knew that if he continued to drag things out and slow down Gu Fei's movements, it would be a bit annoying. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Brother Zui, hurry up and go. I can do it myself." "Okay, you be careful. I think you should go to the beach at the pier and drink some wine. If you're there, the people who received the quest won't dare to touch you." After Gu Fei patted him, he nodded at Tsubasa Sakaratsuka and Boundless Mang and ran out of the city gate as fast as he could. "Brother Zui, you're such a practical person. Why didn't you be polite to me?" Fireball's face was full of tears. He swore to himself that he would never play with high-quality equipment again. "Then Fireball, you go drink. We'll hurry up and go," the other two also said to Fireball. At this critical moment, Tsubasa Sakaratsuka had the demeanor of a general. He didn't stick to the girl and used his fastest speed to search the other side. He randomly chose a side in the Boundless Mang and slowly walked away. Gu Fei sped along the beach outside the city. He felt that it was a bit strange when he saw that everything was calm. Since Azuma Tsubasa had already left the city, the guilds should have guessed his intentions and wanted to set up camp at the beach. Even if they couldn't set up camp in a short time, there should be some scattered people around. For example, the guards at the city gate. How could they disappear so quickly after coming out of the city gate? Gu Fei looked left and right. Other than Sakurazuka Tsukuzi, who had just come out with him and the vast expanse of grass, there was no one else. Of course, Gu Fei didn't know that the scene at the West Gate had already changed the situation. After a few minutes of fierce and chaotic struggle, someone finally took advantage of the opportunity when he fell and ruthlessly snatched the staff from his hands. Although he was quickly slaughtered amidst the crowd's cries of surprise, he was very happy that he managed to get his hands on the magic staff. This person was a warrior. When he resurrected at the warrior camp, he was still holding the magic staff in his hand. After he couldn't wait to admire the magic staff's attributes, his whole body was already numb. At this time, his guild master had already received the good news of him snatching the magic staff and immediately sent a congratulatory message. In the end, he received a bitter reply from the warrior, "Guild master, we were tricked." At the same time, he sent the magic staff's attributes to the guild master. It was an extremely ordinary magic staff, but it was easy for people to understand that they had been tricked. The guild master immediately sent an order to the other guild members, immediately chase out of the city. Then, he was about to tell the other guild masters about this situation, but the moment before he sent the message, he suddenly stopped. Why do I have to tell the others? He suddenly asked himself this question. The others don't know that the magic staff is fake. Seeing our people snatch it, they definitely won't be satisfied. Therefore, they will definitely gather at the warrior camp. Since their attention has been successfully diverted, aren't we the only ones who know the true whereabouts of the magic staff? That was close, I almost did something stupid. The guild master quickly deleted the message he had just written and sent it to the warrior who sacrificed himself to pick up the magic staff. You've worked hard. Go offline and rest for a while. Ah. Why? The warrior didn't understand. The guild master didn't hide anything and simply explained his thoughts. This warrior really didn't care about personal matters for the sake of the guild. He nodded happily and went offline. Everything was as the guild master had predicted. Although the other guilds didn't manage to snatch the magic staff, they clearly saw who had it. At this time, after reporting it, the guilds had already started moving towards the warrior camp, ready to use their actions to shed all pretense of cordiality. In the end, before they could do anything, the comrade who stayed behind at the warrior camp sent a message. That warrior immediately went offline after reviving. Fuck, he moved so fast. The guild masters were all furious. No matter how good an individual was, no matter how powerful a guild was, they could only scratch the wall in pain when faced with going offline. Fuck, guard the warrior camp 24 hours. Don't let go of anyone who came into contact with that guy. A guild master had already gone crazy and issued such an order. As the person in charge of this event, Narrow Shadow was also very angry. He communicated with the guild masters one by one, venting his displeasure in his heart. It's rare that everyone is free. Come to my tavern on the beach for a drink. It's my treat. Narrow Shadow sent out an invitation. Some guild masters who liked to vent their anger immediately agreed. Others felt that Narrow Shadow's invitation this time seemed to have a deeper meaning. In the end, no one refused. All right, I'll wait for everyone at the tavern. See you there. After Narrow Shadow sent this message, he started walking towards his tavern on the beach. There was a smile on his face the entire time. He didn't look like he was angry in the message at all. Chapter 421. The sun, the waves, the beach, and a group of people running like dogs. Gu Fei was one of them. Since he already knew that Jian Nan's group of 7 was outside the city, finding a boat was no longer important. It was more important to quickly find the people. The area outside of Waterfront City was not as vast as a main city, because there was a body of water not too far away. The terrain here was relatively simple. It was mainly a sandy beach without any ups and downs. Occasionally, there would be flowers, grass, and trees, but they were not very big. A small forest could be counted, but it was definitely not a forest. Therefore, the view here was relatively vast. Gu Fei looked around as he ran along the coast. In reality, he was going in circles around Waterfront City. After going in circles, Gu Fei finally saw a group of people. There were far more than 7 people. It was clear that they were not Jian Nan's group. However, they were still in a hurry, carrying weapons in their hands and emitting a murderous aura. At the same time that Gu Fei saw them, the other party also noticed Gu Fei. 4 people suddenly separated from the group and ran towards Gu Fei. What do you do? The 4 immediately asked when they arrived in front of Gu Fei. Their tone was not very friendly. Nothing, just running. Gu Fei replied without batting an eyelid. Running? The other party was stunned. Life is about movement. Gu Fei ran and jumped a few times in a professional manner. He was a physical education teacher. The other party looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. Gu Fei grinned. The 4 stared at him without blinking, as if they were hesitating about something. What do you guys want? If there's nothing else, I'll continue running. Gu Fei said. The 4 didn't reply. It seemed that they were still hesitating. Gu Fei smiled again and said, goodbye. Then, he ran around the 4 of them. At this moment, the 4 suddenly made up their minds. After shouting, stop, they pounced towards Gu Fei. Their group was still advancing when the leading player suddenly received a message, fuck, we're dead. What? The leader didn't understand. That bastard killed us. The man repeated. The captain was startled and quickly turned his head to the side to look. The mage in black continued to run forward on the beach as if there was no one around, and the 4 brothers who had just passed by had disappeared. The captain's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. Because he was in a hurry, when he saw this suspicious character, he randomly sent 4 players to question him. In the end, the other party's answer was strange. Just in case, he gave the order to kill him. The 4 players were all good players, so he didn't think it would be a problem to deal with a mage, so he didn't even look back and continued to lead the team forward. In the end, less than 5 seconds after he gave the order, the news came that the 4 of them were dead. This was simply inconceivable. Even if this mage was an expert, there should have been a process of entanglement when fighting with the 4 of them, right? How could he defeat all 4 of them in 5 seconds? The captain's face was solemn as he asked the dead, "How did you die?" "He killed him instantly." "Instant death? You were killed instantly by a mage?" The captain was shocked. He was talking to a warrior. The term instant death was usually not associated with warriors, unless they encountered a boss that was many levels higher than them. "Yes," the other party replied with absolute certainty. The captain looked towards the beach again in shock. "Damn! This mage runs so fast!" he exclaimed again. In the time it took to send a few messages, the mage had already surpassed their team and left them in the dust. Previously, he had only noticed that there was a stranger on the beach where there shouldn't be anyone, so he didn't pay much attention to the details. Now that he was paying attention, he found that this mage was full of strangeness. This person's background was unknown, and he didn't know if he had anything to do with what they wanted to do. Should he continue to entangle with him? The captain couldn't make up his mind. If this person was just an ordinary character, he would have killed him just now. Why would he have so much trouble? But he was also an expert, which made him feel very troublesome. After Gu Fei killed those 4 guys, he had been waiting for the team's next move. In the end, there was no reaction for a long time, so he didn't take it seriously and quickened his pace, leaving them behind. At this time, Fireball, who had gone to the tavern on the beach, sent a message to Gu Fei. This kid went to the artificial safe zone to find a sense of security, but he inadvertently listened in on the gathering of the guild bosses in Waterside City. Fireball, who was listening attentively, more or less heard the whole story and learned about the incident where the staff had been dropped at the West City Gate. At this time, the staff had already been obtained by a guild called the Munitions Factory. The person who had picked up the staff had immediately gone offline, and the guild leaders were currently sulking over this matter. The item has already been dropped. Gu Fei was startled when he heard this news. He couldn't help but look back at the team that had already fallen behind him. Gu Fei could only think that such an existence had something to do with Jian Nan's group, but the problem was that other than himself, the others were obviously here for the resurrection skill equipment. Now that the staff had been dropped, why were these people still searching for something outside the city gate? "Ask around and see what the guild emblem of the munitions factory looks like," Gu Fei replied to Fireball. After sending the message, he turned around and sprinted towards the team of players. The captain saw that Gu Fei was getting further and further away from them, but he couldn't come up with any ideas. He thought that he might as well leave it at that, but he didn't expect that guy to suddenly turn around and run towards his team. "Archers," the captain hurriedly called out. Immediately, an archer came out and shot arrows at Gu Fei. Gu Fei stopped in his tracks and swung his sword to knock down the arrows. The archer was shocked and speechless. Gu Fei took the opportunity to shout at them, "Don't attack, I just want to ask something." "Who are you?" the captain shouted. "It's not convenient to talk at this distance. Can you come closer?" Gu Fei actually wanted to look for the guild emblem on the archer. He didn't think about it when he killed the 4 people in a second. The captain wanted to say no, but there were dozens of people on his side. It was not right for him to be afraid of a single person, so he nodded and said, "Come here." To show that he didn't have any ill intentions, Gu Fei put his sword back into his pocket. The captain heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Gu Fei's actions. However, if he knew that the speed at which Gu Fei drew his sword from his pocket was not much different from when he held it in his hand, he would definitely not be so relieved. In the blink of an eye, Gu Fei was in front of them and hurriedly scanned the row of people. Fuck! Not a single person was wearing a guild emblem. Gu Fei cursed under his breath. At this time, the news that Fireball had inquired about arrived. I heard that the guild emblem of the munitions factory is a small tank. It's very easy to recognize. There was also another piece of news that he had just overheard. These guild leaders were planning to work together to destroy the munitions factory guild, and they were going to do it immediately. Gu Fei was still calm. His eyes quickly searched the group of people, but he still didn't see a single person wearing a guild emblem. For them to be so harmonious, they must have specially discussed this. Gu Fei. The other party saw that Gu Fei was in front of him, but he didn't say anything. His eyes swept across the group of people sneakily. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, "Who are you? What do you want?" "Nothing, nothing. Everyone continue with your work." Gu Fei suddenly turned around and ran away. Fuck. Everyone was dumbfounded and looked at each other. "Captain, should we get rid of him?" Someone came up and asked. "Forget it." The captain looked at the back of Gu Fei running away. "The less trouble, the better. We still have business to attend to. Hurry up and move forward." The group continued to move forward. Gu Fei was in front of them, gradually running further and further away. He suddenly realized that no matter what this group of people wanted to do, he finally knew where they were heading. The terrain outside of Waterside City was simple. It was just a circle, and he was also heading in this direction. Whatever they wanted to do, he might be able to easily encounter them. This was Gu Fei's plan. Therefore, he didn't use words to probe the other party's background. Instead, he turned around and ran. At this moment, in the city, the various large guilds that had just encircled Jian Nanyo's group of 7 were once again busy. This time, their target was one of the large guilds in Waterside City, the munitions factory. After the period of territorial wars at the pier and beach, it had been a long time since a large-scale guild war had broken out in Waterside City. The various guilds' hierarchy had already been set, and everyone was carefully managing and maintaining the current balance. However, the appearance of this exquisite equipment had finally broken this balance. The munitions factory, which was suspected to have obtained this equipment, was hated by all the other guilds. At this moment, the various guild leaders were gathered at a table. Taking advantage of the alcohol, they all issued a declaration of war against the munitions factory in their own guilds. This was the largest alliance of guilds in Waterside City's history. There were as many as 11 guilds that jointly issued a challenge to the munitions factory. The munitions factory did not have the strength to go against the 11 guilds. At this moment, the guild leader was feeling extremely proud of his petty cleverness. Suddenly, he was met with a calamity. He was leading a group of people on the streets, intending to quickly leave the city to search for Jian Nanyo's group. Suddenly, several groups of people appeared from various streets. This was the first time he had seen such a grand scene. They didn't even have the time to attack before they were extinguished by the other party like a torrential storm. At the same time, bad news came from everywhere. All the members of the munitions factory who had a small tank on their chest were surrounded and beaten up. Even those who had not returned to participate in this matter were no exception. In the blink of an eye, the parties that had been encircling the leveling area without interfering with each other had valiantly pounced on them as if they had encountered a boss. Many members of the munitions factory did not understand what was going on when they arrived at the resurrection point. At this moment, the guild leader of the munitions factory was also crouching at the resurrection point. Outside the resurrection point, a group of hungry wolves was eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. What made him want to cry even more was that at this moment, the party that had left the city to search for Jian Nanyo's group of 7 had yet to be killed. At this moment, they were still following his request and reporting the situation to him from time to time. Nothing, still nothing. At this moment, the guild leader of the munitions factory finally understood the principle of, an innocent man gets into trouble because of his wealth. This made him feel even more wronged because he was not pregnant at all. He was only pretending to have it for a while. Chapter 422. Now that things had developed to this point, the guild master of the munitions factory did not dare to persist. Now that things had developed to this point, the entire guild was in trouble. Many people did not even know the reason, and the guild channel was filled with complaints. The guild master had no choice but to compromise and confess the truth to the other guild masters. He did not obtain the resurrection equipment at all, and that the staff was a fake. At this time, the guild master did not personally participate in the encirclement. At this time, they were still drinking in the tavern on the beach. They did not have to show up. Just a casual meeting behind the scenes could decide the fate of countless players. This feeling was very pleasing to them. At this time, everyone received the news at the same time and could not help but be stunned. They could understand the actions of the guild master of the munitions factory. Although they all condemned him for being short-sighted, everyone broke out in a cold sweat. This was because if this situation happened to their own guild, it was very likely that they would make the same decision. Then, it would be their own guild that would suffer the disaster. All the guild masters rejoiced at this, and at the same time, their expectations for the resurrection equipment were ignited. At this time, the guild master of Green Narrow Shadow suddenly said coldly, "Now that you say it's not, it's not. Do you think we are all idiots?" When the guild masters heard this, they immediately felt that it made sense. It was very likely that the guy from the munitions factory was bluffing them. Then, they heard Narrow Shadow continue to instigate, "We must not let him go. Yes. Kill this son of a bitch." The guild masters were furious. At this time, the emotions of the guild masters were not calm, and with the addition of the alcohol, it was very easy for them to be agitated. Narrow Shadow looked at the guild masters and cursed as he once again ordered his own guild to continue the hunt. An imperceptible smile flashed across the corner of his mouth. At the same time, he also sent out a few messages, "Move quickly. Otherwise, we won't be able to hide it anymore." Although the guild masters appeared to be very agitated, Narrow Shadow believed that there must be more shrewd guild masters among them who were preparing for a backup plan. They continued to chase after the people from the munitions factory while continuing to search for the whereabouts of Jian Nan and the others. The area outside of Waterside City was not large, and the field of vision was wide. It was not suitable for a secret operation. If he did not hurry, it was very likely that the plan that he had been implementing would fall short. On the beach outside the city, Gu Fei was still running in circles. That group of people had long since been left behind by him. As he ran, the scene in front of him was revealed layer by layer. Finally, on the seemingly endless beach, Gu Fei saw a group of people in the distance. There weren't many of them, only about 5 or 6. Gu Fei knew that he had finally met the people he was looking for. Jian Nan Yu and his group left the city gate and ran towards the coordinates of their ship. Unfortunately, with a warrior and a priest in the party, their speed was not much faster. However, the view of the beach was wide. The few of them kept looking around, but they did not find anything unusual. At this time, they could already see the waves at the coordinates of the ship. Their hearts surged. Glue suddenly pointed to the front and shouted, "A person is running over there." Alone? Jian Nanyu didn't have the eagle eyes, so he couldn't see clearly. Now that victory was right in front of him, he didn't have the mood to think about it. He just urged everyone to hurry up. Glue kept staring at the figure. The more he looked, the more familiar and scary he felt. Finally, he roared, "Damn it, it's a video mage. This brat is really haunting us." Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. "But he's only one person," Fire Burning Clothes said. Everyone's faces suddenly showed joy. Because of the collaboration between Gu Fei and 100 Era's strategist, they had some scruples. If it was just one person, Jian Nanyu believed that with the cooperation of their elite team, there was no one in the game who could challenge them alone. "Keep going. If he comes over, take care of him," Jian Nanyu said. "He escaped from that street. It's impossible that he doesn't have PK points on him, right? If he's lucky, maybe he'll drop his equipment." Everyone began to imagine a beautiful future. As the six walked, they paid attention to Gu Fei's movements. Jian Nanyu sent a message to Blackwater, and after confirming his existence, he informed them to be completely prepared for battle. Gu Fei approached quickly. In fact, he was already in the archer's attack range, but Glu didn't move. They knew that this kind of attack was meaningless against Gu Fei. They waited patiently, waiting for Gu Fei to get close enough. They would first cut off his retreat and then slowly take care of him. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The few of them were secretly counting the distance between them and Gu Fei, constantly exchanging glances with each other. They had already figured out a good way to run, and their hands were ready to use their skills. Just when they had gathered all their strength, Gu Fei suddenly stopped in his tracks. He didn't make a move. He just raised his hand and pointed behind the 6 of them, signaling them. Don't be fooled. Jian Nanyu thought that this was Gu Fei's trick to divert their attention. Perhaps when they turned around, Gu Fei's attack would follow. However, Blackwater, who was slowly approaching Gu Fei from the other side in stealth, also saw the scene behind Jian Nanyu's group. He immediately sent a message in shock, "Danan, behind you." It was impossible for Jian Nanyu to suspect his own brother. He quickly turned around and saw a group of men and horses charging at them at the fastest speed on the coastline. The archers in the front row had already set up their bows and arrows. They would be able to attack in a few steps. How is this possible? Jian Nanyu was shocked. He wasn't surprised to see Gu Fei here. After all, Gu Fei wasn't the target of his fake staff strategy. However, the group in front of him was obviously from the guild. They should be fighting each other now. Even if they reacted quickly, they shouldn't be able to organize their people so quickly. Their opponents were lined up neatly and had meticulously assigned classes. It was obvious that they had prepared well in advance. Not only did it mean that their opponents didn't fall for the trap, but they also seemed to have known their movements all along. They had waited patiently until now to make their move. A whistling sound. The leader of the other side had already fired a sniper shot at Jian Nanyu. Jian Nanyu blocked the arrow with his shield. At the same time, he heard the enemy shout, "Brother Jian Nan, you're really vicious. How many people's levels did you trick with a fake staff? It seems like the munitions factory is done for because of your fake staff." Southern Azure Sword put down his shield and looked at the newcomer. He recognized him as the vice president of Green Narrow Guild, Willow Weijian. In Waterside City, he was the number 2 archer, second only to Glu. However, now that Glu had dropped a level, he had become the number 1 archer in Waterside City. "But it seems like I didn't trick you," Jian Nanyu said perfunctorily. He was extremely anxious in his heart. There was a huge group of people in front of them, and a powerful magician like Gu Fei behind them. Escaping was a problem. Even if they forced their way onto the boat, the magicians would just bombard them. It went without saying that Willow Weijian was not worried about it. He smiled after hearing Jian Nanyu's words, "That's why we're very grateful for Brother Rini's help." What? Huo Rini was confused and angry. He felt that the enemy was trying to drive a wedge between them. Jian Nanyu thought so too. However, 2 seconds later, he suddenly realized what was going on. "You guys are following him?" Jian Nanyu finally realized what was going on. It was indeed because of Huo Rini, and Huo Rini had no idea what was going on. Huo Rini was the only one who had died in the battle on the street. He did not encounter any trouble when he came out from the resurrection point. Jian Nanyu and the others initially thought that the enemy was only guarding the resurrection point to prevent them from going offline. However, they realized that the enemy was a lot more scheming than that. When Huo Rini was killed, Green Narrow Guild was the only guild that was chasing after them. After he was resurrected, the enemy pretended not to notice them, but they were actually following them in the dark. Initially, the 7 of them had decided to split up. However, Huo Rini had already predicted that the 7 of them would meet up sooner or later. Even if they weren't in the city, they would still be on the same boat when they left Linshui City. Therefore, as long as they followed Huaruni, they would eventually be able to find the other 6. The rendezvous was earlier than they had expected. At the west gate of Linshui City, the 6 of them had put on a show. They managed to fool everyone, but they could not fool Green Narrow Guild, which was following them secretly. However, they still maintained their silence. They were beating Jian Nan at his own game, just like the munitions factory. They were trying to trick Jian Nan Yu and the others into escaping, but they were actually waiting for the perfect opportunity to deal a fatal blow to them. They were waiting for Jian Nan Yu and the others to meet up. Naturally, it was when they were about to leave Linshui City. Green Narrow Guild's plan was very bold. They knew about the existence of the resurrection equipment on Jian Nan Yu and the others. Their goal was to capture all of them in one fell swoop. This was the only way to ensure that nothing went wrong. Jian Nanyu believed that there were definitely Green Narrow Guild members lying in ambush at all the resurrection points. No matter which of the 6 of them was sacrificed to resurrect, they would have to endure an endless cycle of reincarnation until the other party dropped the Staff of Resurrection. Green Narrow Shadow, the guild leader of Green Narrow Guild, had become the initiator of the munitions factory's attack. He had even gathered all the guild leaders together to monitor their actions. However, his guild had been secretly taking action against the 7 of them. When Jian Nanyu realized this, he was filled with regret. Now that they were being attacked from both the front and the back, there was no point in compromising. They could only fight with all their might. After the 7 of them exchanged glances, Jian Nanyu saw the same determination in everyone's eyes. The attack of Willow Reed Arrow's team arrived at this moment. The 7 of them dodged and Jian Nanyu and Flaming Cloak's combined attack quickly reappeared. Jian Nanyu provided cover while Flaming Cloak, Fire Beacon City, and Flaming Tree Thousand Layers Flames quickly created a fire barrier. "Get on the boat!" Glue roared. On the other side, the 2 of them had worked together to gain some time. He launched an attack at Gu Fei, hoping to delay him. In the end, Gu Fei easily dodged his attack. For a moment, Glue felt that his existence was extremely petty, as if he could not help at all. Jian Nanyu and the others quickly retreated to the boat while paying attention to Gu Fei's actions. What surprised them was that Gu Fei did not do anything to stop them from leaving. Chapter 423. The 7 of them stared at the motionless Gu Fei in disbelief while they jumped into the prepared boats. "You guys go first." Jian Nanyu and Flaming Cloak stayed behind and continued to light fires. Even though the fiery robed man had died twice, Fire Beacon City was a skill from his staff, so it was not weakened at all. On the other hand, his skill cooldowns were still the same. Both Firewall and Sea of Fire were his weapons to slow down the enemy. However, if the enemy came prepared, then it would be a joke if the 7 of them could escape so easily. The enemy's ranged classes were also crazily attacking. No matter how strong Flaming Cloak and Jian Nanyu were, they couldn't take so many attacks at once. How could they have the time to set up an interception? Jian Nanyu swung his shield as if he had finally made up his mind. He stared at the expressionless Gu Fei and suddenly took out an item from his pocket. He threw it over and said, "This is half. I'll pay you the other half after we're done." Gu Fei leisurely opened the money pouch to take a look, then sent a message to the elite squad, "Received half." "Then let's do it," the Han family young master said. Aside from Jian Nanyu, the other 6 watched an unbelievable scene unfold in front of them. Gu Fei quickly unsheathed his sword and a fiery light descended from the sky. The members of the Green Narrow Guild suffered heavy casualties from the spell, so they were naturally shocked. It wasn't that they couldn't dodge the spell attack, but rather, with such an absolute advantage, no one would care about a spell hitting them. Only in an evenly matched battle would players care about the gains and losses of each attack. The Green Narrow Guild paid the price for their boldness. They didn't expect this unremarkable mage to be such a ruthless character. More importantly, they saw Glue attacking this mage. The enemy of an enemy was naturally a friend. Who would have thought that this mage would attack them, and in such an unrestrained manner? What's going on? Let alone Green Narrow's guild, even the other 6 people in the group of 7 didn't understand what was going on. They only saw South Azure Blade toss a bag of money over, as if he had reached some kind of agreement with Gu Fei. We'll talk about it later. Everyone, retreat. Jian Nanyu gritted his teeth as he spoke. Clearly, he was struggling to cooperate with Gu Fei. Wall of electricity. Gu Fei pointed his sword horizontally and created another barrier around Fire Beacon City. The Fiery Cloak's Fire Beacon City had a very short cooldown, so it could be used a second time. It immediately cooperated with Gu Fei's wall of electricity and unleashed another one. 2 Fire Beacon Cities and 1 electric wall combined into one on this small beach like the Great Wall. Jian Nan's group of 7 couldn't care less about anything else. They took this opportunity to quickly climb onto the small boat that they had prepared. The melee players of Green Narrow Guild were trying their best to get around the Great Wall. As for the ranged players, the 7 of them had already run out of the mage's attack range. The archer's attacks were blocked by Jian Nan with his shield, while Gu Fei jumped forward and slashed down a large number of them. Jian Nan deeply stared at Gu Fei. The 2 sides had indeed reached an agreement, but at this time, with the hatred between the 2 sides, Jian Nan was very suspicious that Gu Fei would not put in the effort. He was also out of ideas, so he took out his money and gambled. He didn't expect Gu Fei to be so trustworthy and cover their retreat. It could be said that he did his best. For example, if Gu Fei didn't shoot down a portion of the arrows, it was hard to say if Jian Nan's group of 7 would have been able to leave safely. The people of Green Narrow Guild didn't expect for someone to appear out of nowhere and ruin their meticulous preparations. They were extremely depressed as they watched the 7 of them board the boat and leave. At this time, an arrow came whistling through the air like a gust of wind. The player who was hit by the arrow immediately turned into a strand of white light. The current number 1 archer of Waterfront City, Willow Arrow, turned pale with fright. He knew that another top expert had arrived. He looked towards the direction of the arrow and saw an archer fiercely shooting at them. Although it was only 1 person, the archer specifically targeted the classes with the lowest health. 1 arrow heavily injured them, and 2 arrows killed them. For a moment, they were in a panic. Willow Arrow was extremely confused. He had never heard that Jian Nan's group of 7 had such top helpers. Why did 2 of them suddenly appear? At this time, some of the melee players had already gone around the Great Wall. They didn't have the heart to pay attention to these unnecessary attacks. They were focused on pouncing towards Jian Nan's group of 7. Thus, they saw Gu Fei step forward and block their path. When the opponents saw that a mage actually dared to come out and act so arrogantly as a human wall, they were furious. They roared and pounced. Gu Fei didn't retreat or dodge. He stepped forward to meet them, his body already spinning like a top. He held the dark streak horizontally in his hand as he spun and pushed it forward. When his right arm rotated to its limit, it actually passed to his left hand and continued to push forward. Gu Fei used dual flame flash. After combining the special footwork of turning and the technique of switching weapons to hands, his efficiency greatly increased. He actually completed 2.5 revolutions, and his attack range reached a ridiculous 900 degrees. The speed of the attack was even more unbelievable. To the bystanders, it seemed like only a blink of an eye, but the flames had already circled 2.5 times, killing and injuring many of the surrounding players. Not only did this attack require a high level of martial arts, but it also contained the skills of an online game. When the sword was switched from the right hand to the left hand, it needed to quickly set the left hand as the main and the right hand as the support. Afterwards, when the left hand returned to the right hand, it needed to be set again. Only by repeating this many times could the high damage be sustained. This was even more troublesome for Gu Fei. He had secretly practiced a lot in order to reach this level in one go. The flames burned out, and the weaker players had long since died. Those who could withstand this attack weren't far from death, and their faces were ashen. Gu Fei no longer had any magic power, but standing in the crowd, no one dared to approach him. Wandering Sword and the others had already left the shore on their 2 boats. When they turned around and saw this scene, they were dumbfounded. This was especially true for the flaming cloak. It was beyond his imagination that a mere dual flame flash could reach such a level. He took out his staff and chanted a dual flame flash to test it out, but the flames were extinguished after only 60 degrees. 900 degrees. This was 15 times what he could do. Flaming Clothes felt his body go weak. Wielding the dark streak sword, Gu Fei looked back. Wandering Sword and the others were already quite a distance away from the shore. He hurriedly reminded the players around him, "What are you waiting for? Chase after them." After he finished speaking, he calmly walked out of the crowd without looking sideways, turned around, and once again assumed the expressionless face of a passerby. "Chase after them." The members of Green Narrow Guild shouted as if to remind themselves. Everyone ignored Gu Fei and charged towards the shore while yelling and shouting. However, the boats were already far away, and the mages couldn't hit them. The archers' attacks were no longer a threat with Wandering Sword's shield and the 2 priests' crazy healing. Flustered and exasperated, Lu Weijian reported the situation to Narrow Shadow. When he looked up, he saw his own troops coming from the other direction. He felt even more depressed. If they had arrived a little earlier, they wouldn't have ended up like this. He looked at the culprit, Gu Fei. He had already turned around and was about to leave as if nothing had happened. Lu Weijian was furious and shouted, "Stop!" Gu Fei stopped in his tracks and turned around. His eyes were extremely cold. Lu Weijian suddenly felt his scalp go numb. He didn't know where to start. He looked at his group of brothers and saw them looking at him with hidden bitterness. They seemed to be very dissatisfied with him provoking this fiend. No matter what, he had already shouted. Lu Weijian was about to say something when he saw Gu Fei turn around and run for his life. "Fuck!" everyone exclaimed. Running away meant that he was guilty. This fellow had acted so cool and wiped out 2 of their teams with a single move. However, looking at his current actions, they finally understood that Gu Fei was actually very wary of them. "Fuck, don't run. Chase after him." Immediately, the group became courageous. Some of them waved their weapons and chased after him. Lu Weijian was also shocked speechless by Gu Fei's actions. However, he had already received the instructions from Narrow Shadow, so he didn't lose his cool. He stopped everyone from acting rashly and directed them to the task at hand. "Quick, find a boat and chase after Jian Nanyu." Gu Fei turned around and saw that the other party didn't seem to be bothering him. He relaxed and said in the mercenary channel, "I got the money," and sent him away. "What are you trying to do?" "Come to the coordinates XXX, Han family young master replied. Gu Fei quickly moved in that direction. "Bring Yutian with you," Han family young master suddenly reminded him. Gu Fei picked up Yutian Shinming, who was standing on the beach in a daze. The 2 of them rushed to the coordinates given by Han family young master. The coordinates were also on the coast. 2 boats were already prepared. Sword Demon, Han family young master, Brother Yu, and Unscathed in Battle were all on the boat. There were also 2 boat owners. "Hurry up and get on the boat." Brother Yu shouted at the 2 of them. Gu Fei and Yutian Shinming boarded 1 boat each. The boat owner seemed to have been informed and immediately drove the boat away from the coast. "What the hell is going on? Where are we going?" Gu Fei was about to attack Jian Nanyu and the others when he was on the coast, but he suddenly received a message from Han family young master saying that they had made a deal with Jian Nanyu. He wanted to get the money first. Gu Fei was so busy this time because he wanted to help Bai Shi Jingluan earn money. At the same time, he was also thinking about the income from killing Jian Nanyu. However, Han family young master said that he had already made arrangements, so Gu Fei didn't ask anymore. Hence, there was the scene of Jian Nanyu paying and Gu Fei helping him out. I'm going after Jian Nanyu. Sword Demon answered. Baisha is still in the city. Gu Fei quickly said. There's no time to wait. Han family young master, who was standing at the bow, turned around and pointed in a direction. He ordered the two boat owners, go that way. You have this thing too. Gu Fei suddenly noticed the thing in Han family young master's hand and was surprised. I borrowed it, Han family young master said. Boundless, boundless, boundless? Gu Fei asked. Hey, you know it's her. Han family young master said. I saw her get it with my own eyes, Gu Fei said. Really? Han family young master's eyes lit up. What mission did you get it from? Chapter 424. Gu Fei told them about how he had killed 30 PK points at sea and how the system guards had chased him to the surface. Han family young master nodded and asked, have you killed 30 PK points? No. Gu Fei answered with a dark expression. Gu Fei knew that he didn't say that out of concern for his comrade. He probably wanted Gu Fei to get another 30 PK points to lure out a fleet, and then he could get a pair of binoculars. Keep it up. Han family young master urged him, and then stood at the bow of the ship with the binoculars to monitor the movements of Jian Nanyu's two ships. This was the truth that the elite group knew the situation very well even though they didn't show their faces. It was because of this pair of binoculars. The players of Eternal Life Among Flowers were tirelessly running along the shore and flipping over haystacks. After they heard about the commotion at the West Gate, they also came out of the West Gate. Using their binoculars, they looked around the vast beach and easily found the movements of so many people. Han family young master didn't know how Green Narrow Guild had their eyes on Jian Nanyu. He only knew that they could successfully intercept him, so he asked Brother Yu to negotiate with Jian Nanyu and inform him that if he needed help, he could make such a deal. At that time, Jian Nanyu didn't know that he had fallen into Green Narrow Guild's trap. He thought that the people from Child Elite Group were playing a trick, or trying to delay them, or trying to confuse them, or trying to find out where they were. In any case, Jian Nanyu didn't care. In the end, he was pincered by Green Narrow Guild and Gu Fei. Green Narrow Guild attacked fiercely, but Gu Fei didn't do anything. Jian Nanyu had no choice but to compromise. He didn't trust the Child Elite Group, but he had no way out at that time. He could only try as much as he could, and he didn't expect that he would be cured in the end. At this time, they were sailing on the water. Jian Nanyu still had doubts about this matter. He asked Glue to pay attention to the surroundings carefully. Glue looked left and right with its eagle eyes, but found nothing. Jian Nanyu was no longer worried about Green Narrow's guild. How could it be so easy to form a fleet in a hurry? On the other hand, Jian Nanyu suspected that the Child Elite Group would be lying in ambush. Now that the Glue did not discover anything, Jian Nanyu felt slightly relieved. He personally steered the boat diagonally across the water. In short, he did not want anyone to discover their route. Little did he know that the Han family young master had been watching them from afar with a pair of binoculars. As for him, it was impossible for him to see the Child Elite Group with the eagle eyes of an archer. The two teams each took two small boats and chased each other on the water. Ask him when he's going to pay the other half. The Han family young master used his binoculars to monitor Jian Nanyu and the others while asking his brother Yu about this issue. When the others heard this, they could not help but want to stand on Jian Nanyu's side. This guy was too vicious. On the way, the young master of the Han family had already explained the purpose of his arrangements. From the beginning, he planned to force Jian Nanyu out of Linshui City until they settled down in the next main city. Only then would he continue to pursue and kill Jian Nanyu. Only then would they be able to control the resurrection point again and again. It would not fall into the hands of Green Narrow's guild or other guilds like what happened in Linshui City. After listening to this plan, everyone finally understood that the Han family young master had his eyes on the resurrection equipment. However, the Han family young master quickly promised that he would not keep the equipment for himself after it was dropped. He would sell it and split the money with everyone. Only then did everyone maintain their enthusiasm. At this moment, Gu Fei was also very busy. On one hand, he told 100 Era's Jingluan that Jian Nanyu and the others had successfully escaped. On the other hand, he told Tsubasa Sakaratsuka and Boundless Mang to stop being busy. The situation was already under control. In the end, the person who felt the most sorry was Fireball. At this moment, Fireball was still pitifully sitting in the tavern on the beach, anxiously waiting for Gu Fei to come back and help him clean up his PK. However, Gu Fei had already left Linshui City. In the end, he could only send a message to Fireball to hurry up and leave Linshui City. In the blink of an eye, everyone had already drifted on the water for half an hour. Apart from the Han family young master who was still standing straight at the bow of the boat with his binoculars, the other 5 were bored to death. Yutian Shinming was holding a bow and shooting fish. Unscathed in battle and the boat owner were discussing the technique of rowing the boat. Brother Yu was holding his little notebook and researching something. Sword Demon was sitting in the middle of the boat and meditating. Unknowingly, the dagger in his right hand had been clamped between his fingers like a cigarette. He did not even realize it. At first, Gu Fei kept looking at the Sword Demon. He wanted to see when he would put the dagger in his mouth again. In the end, he did not get what he wanted even after looking at him for a long time. The Sword Demon maintained this posture while he was deep in thought. In the end, with nothing else to do, he could only look for the third person on the boat besides the Han family young master and the Sword Demon to chat with. "Where are we going?" Gu Fei asked. He felt that the boat owner should be more familiar with the waterways of Linshui City. "Looking at this direction, I'm not too sure." The boat owner shook his head. Just as he finished speaking, the Han family young master gave another instruction. "A little more to the left." The boat owner seemed to have suddenly realized something and said to Gu Fei, "If we continue to turn left, it looks like we're going to Xiaoyu City." "What city?" Gu Fei thought that the answer was either Sunset City or Shady Forest City. He did not expect that there was a third main city near Linshui City. "Xiaoyu City." The boat owner said again. "What city?" This time, the one who asked this question was the Han family young master, who was standing at the bow. Obviously, he was also very surprised by this answer. The boat owner helplessly wanted to say it for the third time, but the Han family young master had already shouted to Brother Yu on the other boat. "Brother Yu, there is another main city here. Do you know?" "Is there?" Brother Yu was also surprised. "The waterways only connect to Shady Forest City and Sunset City." "I've checked." The boat owner also laughed. "It's true that the waterways only connect to these 2 cities, but that's the system's waterways. Ferries do indeed only connect to these 2 cities. But now, it's not impossible for us to sail our own boat in the direction of Xiaoyu City." After listening to these words, the Han family young master also sighed. "So, they're going to this city, not Shady Forest City. What's the problem?" Gu Fei asked. "It's nothing. It's just that for someone, this is not good news." The Han family young master said. "Have you contacted water depth?" The Sword Demon asked. I think so. I don't remember." The Han family young master stood back at the bow of the boat. At the edge of the forest in Shady Forest City, water depth brought a few brothers from the guild and ambushed Qinli along the shore. "Guild leader, what are you doing?" someone asked him. "Someone will come ashore from here, but it's their own boat, so we don't know where to come from. We can only ambush them like this." Water Depth replied. "Oh." No one in the guild asked much. They all believed in their guild leader. They thought it might be an important mission. Anyway, what they had to do wasn't tiring. They just had to lie in the grass and look at the shore outside. As the guild leader, Water Depth naturally took the lead. He lay in the grass and didn't move at all like Qiu Shaoyun. It's almost time. He looked at the time and thought. Another half an hour passed. From the Han family young master's binoculars, he could see that Jian Nan and the others had already docked their boat. There were no docks around here. As expected of Xia Fog City, the system didn't have access to water. After the 7 people got off the boat, they didn't leave in a hurry. Instead, they looked for something to hide the boat. While doing this, Jian Nan reminded Glue to pay attention to the water. Of course, the Han family young master saw this and hurriedly reminded both boats to slow down. They didn't want to enter Glue's eagle eye's field of vision. After a while, the 7 people packed up and left. The Han family young master hurriedly signaled the 2 boats to quickly dock. Can we still catch up like this? Yu Tian Shinming asked. With this thing, how can we not find it? This isn't Shady Forest City. The Han family young master knocked on the binoculars and said. Because of the dense forest in Shady Forest City, the binoculars were also very limited. Therefore, the Han family young master had to ask water depth to help guard it. Since this wasn't Shady Forest City, the binoculars could naturally be used. It was better to rely on oneself than to ask for help from others. Unexpectedly, the owner of the boat laughed after hearing this. If it's Xiaoyu City, this thing may not be of much use. Why? The Han family young master was startled. He casually read the name of the main city. Could it be, this city has a lot of fog? The answer was as expected by the Han family young master. They looked at each other. It wasn't easy to chase Jian Nan to this place. Were they going to let him escape under the natural cover of such a thick fog? At this time, the Han family young master had new news. He opened it and saw that it was water depth. It's been more than an hour. Why aren't they here yet? I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? The Han family young master replied. Don't be so old-fashioned. If you have something to say, just say it. Water depth had a faint feeling that something was wrong. The truth is, they may not be coming. You guys can call it a day and go back to rest. Sleep early. Fuck, you bastard. Are you messing with me again? You may not believe it even if I say it, but this time, I actually made a wrong deduction. Fuck, who are you trying to fool? See, I knew you wouldn't believe me. I can't understand it either. With my intelligence, how could I make a mistake? Let's not talk about this for now. I still have things to do. Let's talk later. After sending this message, the Han family young master quickly blocked Water Depth's message. No matter how much Water Depth's messages bombarded him, he was completely oblivious. He looked at the 5 people on the 2 ships and said, Comrades, the biggest challenge in history is here. In this unfamiliar main city, in this unfamiliar environment, do you guys have the confidence to kill Jian Nan? As long as you tell me where he is, it's as easy as lifting a finger. Gu Fei said lazily. This really hit the Han family young master's sore spot. This was a rare situation that he didn't expect to happen and mess up his entire plan. Brother, you said in shame, this time it's my fault. I was too careless. It's not your fault. The Han family young master waved his hand. Everyone thought that he was going to admit his mistake. Just as they were about to listen attentively, they saw him turn around and facepalm, Xiaowu City. Which motherfucking idiot designed this? Achoo! The self-disciplined game worker comrade Yi Xiaowu suddenly sneezed heavily. Chapter 425. The child elite group's 2 small boats docked at the shore. The 6 of them jumped off the boat. After paying the fare, the 2 players drove the boat back. Han family young master took the binoculars and looked in the direction that Jian Nan Yu and the others had gone. All he saw was a vast expanse of white. Damn it! Han family young master cursed in his heart. The other 5 gathered around and asked for the binoculars. After admiring the scene for a while, they shook their heads and sighed. Let's take a look at Xiaowu City first, Sword Demon suggested. Everyone nodded. It wasn't easy to get here. Although there were no traces of Jian Nanyu and the others, they couldn't just turn back. That would be too embarrassing. Wu Shang, go and chop their boat in half, Han family young master said. No one was in a good mood. Unscathed in battle was no exception. He strode to the place where Jian Nanyu and the others had hidden their boats. He pulled the 2 small boats ashore and took out a huge axe from his pocket. Clang clang clang, he vented his anger. In the blink of an eye, the 2 small wooden boats had become a pile of broken wood. The young master of the Han family had already gathered a large bundle of firewood and withered grass and piled it on the ground. He then took out a small book from his bosom and tore it open. Turning to Gu Fei, he said, "Expert, lend me a lighter." Fireball. Gu Fei raised his sword and chanted. A ball of flame jumped up from the tip of his sword. Han family young master reached out and lit the small book in his hand. He stuffed it into the pile of dried grass and said to Unscathed in battle, "Whirlwind slash, give me a whirlwind slash." What? Unscathed in battle asked. Give me some wind. Unscathed in battle performed another whirlwind slash. He used the power of the wind to burn the grass to burn the wood to burn the broken boards of the boat. In the end, the planks of the boat were too wet. When they caught fire, only smoke could be seen but no flames could be seen. The people around the bonfire were choked and fled in all directions, cursing. Cough, cough, cough. The moment Unscathed in battle's whirlwind flamethrower stopped casting his whirlwind slash, he was engulfed by a large cloud of gray smoke. He choked the most, coughing loudly as he tried to escape. He shouted at the few players, "Such a big cloud of smoke, will it expose us?" The Han family young master continued to admire the mist with his binoculars. He mumbled, "It would be best if we can lure Jian Nanyu and the others back." In the end, it was unknown whether it was because the fog was too thick or Jian Nanyu and the others did not turn back after they left, but the fire and smoke did not attract any attention. It became a pure vent. In the end, the broken planks could not be burned because they were too wet. There are also many level 5 mercenary groups. In terms of experts, 4 of them are in the top 10. One is 3 Size of Flowing Maple, who is ranked 7th on the Warrior leaderboard. The other is Apple Vinegar, who is ranked 4th on the Thief leaderboard, Wind String, who is ranked 8th on the Grandmaster of Combat leaderboard, and Strange Eye, who is ranked 2nd on the Sorcerer leaderboard and also one of the new top 5. Everyone should know this person, right? Yes, I do, Gu Fei replied. The others looked at Gu Fei in shock. How did you know? They were all too familiar with Gu Fei's character. He did not have much interest in online games, and any expert player would be nothing more than cannon fodder in his hands. He would never care about these famous players. Yet, he knew of this player called Strange Pupil. Could it be that the 2 of them were in some sort of relationship? You guys know each other? Brother Yu asked. He felt that the only reason Gu Fei knew this person was because the 2 of them knew each other in real life. That was why Gu Fei knew his in-game identity. I don't know him, but I have seen this name before, Gu Fei said. Where did you see him? The experts were all very interested. The forums, Gu Fei said. You also go on the forums? Brother Yu was excited. Could it be that after spending so much time with him, he had developed a hobby in this area? See, this was the charm of a person. A long time ago, Gu Fei said. It was indeed a long time ago. That was the first time Gu Fei showed off his abilities. When he killed Non-Smiler to level 8, his sorcerer equipment was appraised and displayed on the forums, causing a lot of controversy. At that time, a user called Strange Eye made a post that caught Gu Fei's attention. Even though he did not know that Gu Fei's strength was mainly due to his kung fu, his analysis was very accurate. Even though he did not know if this user was the same person as the strange eye in the game, Gu Fei at least had an impression of the name. Oh, is that so? Brother Yu was a little surprised after listening to Gu Fei's explanation. It had been so long, but Gu Fei still remembered everything. Brother Yu was sure that Gu Fei had seen the posts that attracted attention. Brother Yu had a vague impression of Gu Fei's analysis, but he could not remember who the user was. From this analysis, it sounds like an expert. But it might not be the same person in the forums and in the game, Brother Yu said. Gu Fei nodded. Actually, when Brother Yu said, everyone knows this person, right? He casually answered, yes. He did not expect this group of people to have such a big reaction and dig out so much information. He felt that these people really had too much time on their hands. Don't worry too much about the level ranking. Sword Demon said, the difficulty of leveling up is so high, and the difference between everyone's levels is very small. Skills and equipment are more important. Although Jian Nanyu dropped a level, I don't think anyone in the top 10 warriors would dare to say that they can beat him. Yes, Boss Sword Demon is right. Drifting, that idiot, looks like he's number 1 on the sorcerer leaderboard. It'll be a piece of cake for him to come and fight with Qianli. Yutian Xinming said. Everyone gave him a sideways glance. This inference was a little too ridiculous, because Gu Fei was really not a representative. It was hard to say whether there was a difference of 5 or 10 levels between him and a monster like him. Suddenly, Sword Demon remembered that level 10 Gu Fei had defeated him when he was level 25. It was really unbearable to recall the past. The discussion about strange pupil came to an end. Brother Yu continued to report, also, there's someone here this Sunday. It's Yen Xiaozhu, number 11 on the thief leaderboard. Huh, this name sounds like a girl. Unscathed in battle said. And it feels like it's a beauty, Yutian Xinming said. We need to find a chance to spar with them, Unscathed in battle said seriously. Gu Fei really wanted to introduce these two guys to the flowers for an eternity. They would definitely be very compatible. The 6 of them continued on their way. At this time, Gu Fei received a message from 100 Generations Jingluan, asking for his location. Do you know Xiaoyu City? Gu Fei replied. How do we go? 100 Generations Jingluan asked. The system doesn't have this route. You can rent a boat from the guild near the tavern on the beach. I'll send you over. Gu Fei's instructions were quite detailed. The main reason was that Waterside City wasn't very safe. If he randomly found a boat, he might very well board a pirate ship. However, the businesses under the big guilds still valued their reputation, so it shouldn't be a bad idea to find them. At this time, 100 Generations Jingluan was also waiting to board a boat at the dock. When he heard that he had to find a boat himself, he went back to the tavern to ask. The various guilds that set up the tavern were also in this business. Naturally, they wouldn't neglect customers. However, the direction to Xiaoyu City was really expensive. This was because this route was not provided by the system. Players had to seize the opportunity to be unkind. Although 100 Generations Jingluan was one of the 5 strongmen, he was really poor. This was because, like Gu Fei, the amount of time he invested in the game was quite limited compared to the average player. At this time, after emptying his pockets, he only had 98 gold coins, 76 silver coins, and 54 copper coins. When 100 Generations Jingluan saw this, he guessed that he really didn't have any money and didn't want to be greedy. Thus, he generously exempted him from paying 5 gold coins and took 95 from him. 100 Generations Jingluan boarded the boat and felt that this trip to earn money was really risky. This time, he wouldn't be able to kill Jian Nanyu and wouldn't be able to earn any money. He wouldn't even have enough money to travel back. It was too miserable. He really didn't understand why the ancient heroes didn't seem to have a job, but why did they never lack money? 100 Generations Jingluan put his hands behind his head and crossed his legs. He lay on the boat and thought to himself. Chapter 426. They passed through mountains, ridges, rivers, and valleys. The terrain around Xia Fog City wasn't that simple. The only thing that didn't change was the thick fog. The 6 of them had a hard time walking through it. Because they only knew the direction of Xia Fog City and didn't know the way, the 6 of them could only move forward in a straight line. No matter what dangers they encountered, they would force their way through. As they slowly met other players, the 6 of them had a much smoother journey because they could finally ask for directions. As the number of people gradually increased, the 6 of them felt that they were getting closer and closer to Xia Fog City. After asking for directions again, Brother Yu ran over and announced happily, "That player is only level 14. It won't be long before he arrives." As expected, after walking for a while, the outline of Xia Fog City finally appeared in the fog. The 6 of them were almost at the foot of the city walls. Xia Fog City's fog was simply unstoppable. It was able to completely cover the entire city. There were players coming and going at the city gates. The instant the Han family young master brushed past someone, he immediately asked, "How do I get to the tavern?" The other person first looked at the Han family young master's appearance in surprise and then gave him the coordinates of the nearest tavern. The Han family young master turned around and saw the 5 of them looking at him with disdain. "I think we're here to chase after Jian Nan," Gu Fei said. "I know. However, we've asked many players along the way, but no one has seen them before. So, we don't know where they're going. As the group leader, I've decided to find a tavern to drink a few cups before making a plan. Maybe Jian Nan's intelligence is just a bit closer to mine and he thought of the same plan. Maybe we'll meet at a tavern," the Han family young master said. "Amazing my ass," the others muttered. However, what the Han family young master said was possible. After running around for so long and finally arriving at a new place, finding a tavern to rest was understandable. Afterwards, the 6 of them came to the nearest tavern. They pushed open the door and wanted to nervously search, but they didn't find anything. Jian Nan's group of 7 was obviously not that delicate. Although they had been running for their lives for a day, they were still busy somewhere. The Han family young master's purpose seemed to be to drink. While everyone was looking for him, he had already arrived at the counter and ordered 2 bottles of liquor. He then chose a seat and sat down. By the time everyone came over, he had already finished his cup. "Brother Yu," asked Jian Nan Yu, "when will you pay the other half?" Han family young master said. "I asked earlier, but you ignored me," Brother Yu said. "Did he block you too?" Han family young master said. "Why also?" Brother Yu was puzzled. "Nothing, it's none of your business." The Han family young master drank another 2 cups and said to them, "Let's analyze the current situation. The first one is also the worst." Jian Nan's group of 7 took advantage of the thick fog to wander around. They didn't come to Xiaoyu City but went somewhere else. "What a jinx, hurry up and spit." Han family young master poured a cup of liquor and passed it to Unscathed in Battle beside him. Unscathed in Battle was very confused. "I'm not the jinx, why should I spit?" Other than this situation, of course they also came to Xiaoyu City. Everyone put yourselves in the shoes of a new main city. What would you do if it was you? What we are doing right now is my answer. Han family young master said. Go to the revival point and register. Sword Demon was the steady and cautious type. Walk around the city and chat with the players. Go to the guild building and the union building to take a look. Brother Yu was the intelligence gathering type and liked to quickly grasp the strength distribution of a city. Walk around more and familiarize yourself with the terrain. Mark the important places. Yutian Shinming was the direction idiot type. Walk around the trading street and the auction house to see if there is any equipment that we haven't seen before. Unscathed in Battle was the type who never forgot to fish for benefits. The last one was Gu Fei. Washing PK. This was the type who always had PK points on him. 6 people, 6 answers. Among them, Gu Fei, Brother Yu and Yutian Shinming all had special attributes, so it was unlikely that it would happen to Jian Nan's group. The situation that Han family young master mentioned was basically eliminated. This was the tavern closest to the city gate. If Jian Nan's group wanted to sit, they should be here. So, they are either registering or shopping. Brother Yu concluded. When they heard this answer, they instinctively leaned towards the first option. 7 men going to the trading street immediately after arriving in the new city. No matter how they thought about it, it sounded weird. They thought about it and looked down on the option that Unscathed in Battle provided. He was so unmanly. The first thing he thought of when he arrived in a new city was to go shopping. In the end, Han family young master made the arrangements. Sword Demon, go to the nearby revival point. Sword Demon nodded and left. Qianli, go to the taverns, Han family young master said. For what? The 7th possibility is that Jian Nan's group has friends here, so they arranged to meet up with them. That makes sense. Gu Fei nodded and went. Sword Demon had stealth so he wouldn't be detected. Gu Fei would be detected, but he could kill him directly. It was safer for these 2 to act alone. Therefore, Han family young master chose these 2 to do things. The other 3 didn't have any tasks. However, drinking was only Han family young master's hobby. The other 3 couldn't sit still after a while. I'll go take a look too. Brother Yu said. Maybe I'll find something. Me too. Unscathed in Battle also stood up. Han family young master didn't have any objections. However, when he saw that Yutian Shinming was also eager to try, he patted him and said, the fog is thick. Don't run around. Yutian Shinming's expression dimmed. Gu Fei walked out of the tavern and immediately asked the passers-by where the tavern was. The passers-by looked at Gu Fei in surprise and pointed behind him. Gu Fei quickly expressed that he wanted to know everything. Therefore, he quickly got the coordinates of 11 taverns in Xiaowu City. Of the 11 taverns, 6 belonged to the system, and 5 were opened by players. Gu Fei specifically asked the passers-by. According to his experience, players tended to go to player-opened taverns when they had a gathering with friends. This kind of tavern was more popular with players, and the business was more humane. From time to time, there would be buy 6 get 1 free, which was very popular with players. Gu Fei found a tavern and was ready to go. Suddenly, someone called him from behind. He turned around and saw that it was Yutian Shinming. The fog was thick, and he didn't dare to run around alone. However, compared to drinking alone with Han family young master, he felt that it was better to die in the fog. When he walked out, he saw that Gu Fei had just asked for directions and hadn't gone far. He immediately stopped him and decided to go with Gu Fei. The 2 of them came to a nearby player-open tavern. After confirming that there was no mistake, Gu Fei took out his weapon and walked in. As long as he found Jian Nanyu, he would immediately fight. Was there a need to say anything? This tavern was much smaller than the systems or the Little Ray's bar in Cloud City. However, the atmosphere was very good. The tavern was full of laughter. Even the owner of the tavern was chatting with familiar customers. Gu Fei carefully looked around and didn't see Jian Nanyu. However, although the tavern was small, it had everything. Although this tavern wasn't big, the owner still had a small private room. Not finding Jian Nanyu in the hall, Gu Fei walked toward the private rooms. There were 4 private rooms in total. Just like Little Ray's bar, there was a cloth hanging on the door as a curtain. Gu Fei didn't think too much. When he reached the first room, he stretched out his hand and lifted the curtain. He saw a man and a woman inside whispering intimately. Feeling someone lift the curtain, the 2 of them looked up in panic. In the end, Gu Fei, who had lifted the curtain, was even more panicked than the 2 of them. After saying, sorry, he hurriedly put the curtain back to its original position. What's wrong? Yutian Shinming, who was behind, didn't see what was going on inside. He had never seen Gu Fei so nervous before. Curious, he also wanted to lift the curtain, but Gu Fei slapped his hand down. It's very busy inside. Busy with what? A man and a woman, Gu Fei said. Wow. Yutian Shinming wanted to lift the curtain even more, but after being glared at by Gu Fei, he didn't make a move in the end. In the second private room, Gu Fei didn't dare to mess around anymore. He knocked on the partition. What's that sound? Hearing someone mumbling inside, Gu Fei lifted the curtain and saw 4 players inside gambling with homemade cards. There was a lot of gold coins on the table. Sorry, wrong room. Gu Fei hurriedly retreated. He knocked on the third room again, but there was no response. He knocked again, but there was still no sound. Was there no one? Gu Fei lifted the curtain and saw a girl sitting opposite the door. Her expression was cold, and she had the temperament of an iceberg beauty. Gu Fei was stunned when he saw her, because the girl's black mage robe was quite similar to his. After a few seconds, the girl still didn't say anything and just looked at Gu Fei. Gu Fei reacted and said, "Sorry, wrong room." After lowering the curtain, he left. Behind him, Yutian Shinming grabbed him and said excitedly, "Beauty." Gu Fei ignored him and went to the last private room. He knocked and lifted the curtain, only to be surprised. "Why are you here?" Yutian Shinming stuck his head out and immediately jumped up. "Damn, why are you here?" Drifting, left-hand love, right-hand handsome, and left-hand love were in the private room. After the Raining Across the Seas mission ended, they separated from everyone else. It was rumored that they had even left the Black Hand mercenary group. Everyone guessed that the 3 of them would go somewhere else and not return to Cloud City. Who would have thought that they would meet here? Why are you here? In fact, Drifting was more surprised than Gu Fei and the others to see him. After all, he was used to wandering around the main cities, while most players stayed in their own territory. Gu Fei and the others should be in Cloud City. It's a long story. Why are you here? Asked Gu Fei. We have to start with our game philosophy, said Drifting. Bah, pretending. Yutian Shinming despised him. Come out and fight me one-on-one if you have the guts. No. Drifting laughed. This place is so foggy. I'm afraid I won't be able to find my way back if I go out. It's safer to stay in the tavern. Butterfly Knot, recently, the content has changed. It's a little dull. Chapter 427. Yutian Shinming's poor sense of direction was mocked by Drifting, who he hated the most. He was so angry that he wanted to fight Drifting to the death. Naturally, no one took him seriously. Gu Fei nodded at Drifting and said, "We still have something to do. We'll leave first." Yutian Shinming was still yelling at Drifting when Gu Fei put down the curtain to separate him from Drifting. "Let's go." As Gu Fei spoke, the curtain behind him was lifted again. Drifting walked out and asked, "What's the matter? Do you need help?" Drifting asked. "I don't need his help. An idiot will only make things worse," shouted Yutian Shinming. "Are you free?" said Gu Fei. "I'm bored," said Drifting. "We don't want to go to this stupid place to level up. Are you afraid that you can't find your way home?" Ha 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 ha. Yutian Shinming was very brave. As someone with poor sense of direction, he dared to laugh at others. Drifting glanced at Yutian Shinming and continued to talk to Gu Fei. "I was going to find a random quest to do, but it seems like you have something more interesting to do." "Nothing. We're looking for Jian Nanyu. Have you seen him?" said Gu Fei. "No. Is he here?" asked Drifting. "I'm not sure." "No matter where he is, if you see him, tell me," said Gu Fei. Gu Fei didn't need help to kill people. He just needed to know the whereabouts of his target. For him, this was enough. However, this was obviously boring for Drifting, so he could only nod and say, "I will." Then they said goodbye and Drifting returned to the private room. Although Yutian Shinming was angry, he still left the tavern with Gu Fei. However, as soon as they left the tavern, they saw a PK. A man against a woman, a warrior against a mage. Surprise flashed across Gu Fei and Yutian Shinming's faces. This woman was the cold beauty from the tavern's private room number 3, and her opponent was the unscathed in battle. Both sides faced each other. A blue light had just faded from the girl's staff, and it was as cold as she was. Unscathed in battle stood proudly with his sword in one hand. He was a true expert after all. However, even though the sword was already in his hand, the expert did not make a move. Because he was already frozen there like a fool. Only then did Gu Fei and Yutian Shinming realize that they were watching a PK that was about to end. Unscathed in battle actually did not completely freeze to death, but his attack was so slow that it made people's hair stand on end. The girl had already raised her staff and started chanting for the next attack. What was waiting for him was death. He was in pain, but then he saw Gu Fei and Yutian Shinming walk out of the tavern next to him. They were very surprised. "Hurry and save me." As expected of an expert, the news came so quickly. The girl's spell had already been cast, and the ice whirlwind swept towards Unscathed in battle. It was already impossible to interrupt it. Gu Fei had no choice but to teleport in front of Unscathed in battle and use dual flame flash. When spells collided, the one with the highest damage would win. Gu Fei obviously had the upper hand, and the ice whirlwind had already been completely destroyed by him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yutian Shinming was counting. His bones were filled with the qualities of a mage, and he was already calculating how long Unscathed in battle would be frozen. When he counted to 5, Unscathed in battle finally regained his freedom. When the girls saw Gu Fei suddenly flash in front of her and destroy her ice whirlwind, a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. However, she still didn't make a sound, and only coldly stared at the three. Gu Fei felt a bit awkward, because he knew that even though Unscathed in battle was a top-tier expert in the game, he was never arrogant. When they first met, Gu Fei thought that he was a quiet and calm person. It wasn't until he was reborn Amethyst that Unscathed in battle revealed his true colors in front of Gu Fei. If this guy was going to cause any trouble, Gu Fei believed that it could only be in this area. Right now, in an unfamiliar city, with an unfamiliar girl, Unscathed in battle was fighting someone. Gu Fei didn't need to think to know that this guy must have tried to strike up a conversation with a beauty, but was rebuffed, and the two turned around and started fighting. The one who attacked first was definitely not Unscathed in battle, but this girl. Unfortunately, the one who spoke first was definitely Unscathed in battle, so Gu Fei didn't feel that it was very honorable for him to help him. As a result, Gu Fei didn't say anything. He only turned around and patted Unscathed in battle, saying, "Let's go." He felt that it was best for them to just leave things as they were. However, as soon as he turned around, a murderous aura assaulted him from behind. Gu Fei's heart trembled, and he hurriedly dodged to the side, slashing out with his sword. The sword slashed through thin air, but the other party had already revealed her figure in order to dodge. It was actually another girl, but she looked quite young. At this time, she circled around Gu Fei's back and actually wanted to continue attacking him. As if he had eyes behind his back, Gu Fei didn't turn around and blocked the attack with his sword. Then, he turned around to face the enemy, but he saw the girl raise her left hand. Gu Fei didn't know what this meant. He only saw that the hand was raised towards his head, so he tilted his head slightly to dodge. In the end, he saw a vast expanse of green powder scatter in the air. In the next moment, Gu Fei's vision went black, and he couldn't see anything. This change was something that Gu Fei had never seen before in PvP. He panicked a little, but he knew that the opponent's attack was coming. He listened to the wind and blocked the opponent's attack with his sword again. With a ding, he blocked the opponent's attack with his sword again. Gu Fei couldn't see, so he couldn't see the surprised expression on the opponent's face. He only knew that he couldn't see anything, so he must have been hit by the opponent's skill. This was definitely a disadvantageous battle. In close combat, he could rely on his ears to block the wind, but Gu Fei didn't forget that there was a sorcerer there. A sorcerer's attack couldn't be determined by listening to the wind. Thinking of this, Gu Fei hurriedly dodged to the side, planning to let Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shinming block the attack. Since it was a skill, of course it had a time limit. Gu Fei's prediction was not wrong. At this time, the sorcerer had indeed used a heavenly fire will on top of their heads. Unscathed in Battle also dodged to the side. However, Gu Fei couldn't see. Dodging was the right decision, but the direction he dodged was wrong. He ran in one direction in a daze, and after 2 steps, he crashed into a wall. Yutian Shinming was stunned. He didn't see Gu Fei's abnormal state at all. When he saw him rush towards the wall, he thought he had some strange skill up his sleeve. He didn't expect him to directly hit the wall like an idiot. Ha 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 ha. A crisp laughter came from the fierce battle. Thinking about the sorcerer's cold expression, even though Gu Fei couldn't see, he could guess that it was the little girl who was laughing. At the same time, he also guessed that Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle probably didn't know that they were in a situation, so he quickly shouted to the two, "I can't see anything." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a sharp whistle. Gu Fei knew that Yutian Shinming had made his move. However, this move made Gu Fei feel bad. Yutian Shinming's bow and arrow damage was extremely high. When he fired, it was always majestic. After the arrow was released, it would sound like a bird singing happily. Normally, this would be fine, but in this situation, he had to rely on his ears. This guy's attack was really troublesome. Gu Fei could clearly feel a murderous intent approaching him at high speed. He knew that the little thief girl was rushing towards him again. However, this was the extent of the murderous intent. Thieves were a class that mainly focused on ambushing, so the sound of their daggers was already weak. At this time, when Yutian Shinming was causing trouble, his ears were filled with the whistling sound of his arrows. Helpless, he could only choose to escape. He reached out his hand and touched the wall in front of him. He quickly turned around and ran. After killing people in the game for so long, when had he ever been in such a sorry state? He even had to run into a wall. Gu Fei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Although Gu Fei's movement speed was fast, no one could move at full speed after closing their eyes. Moreover, his opponent was a thief. He only wanted to buy a little more time. Moreover, he believed that Unscathed in Battle wasn't a dead person. At this time, he should at least lend him a hand, right? Sure enough, Unscathed in Battle wasn't a dead person. Gu Fei had only run a few steps when he heard Unscathed in Battle's indignant voice behind him. "Damn, I can't see anymore." Then, he heard the howling of the wind. Gu Fei knew that Unscathed in Battle must have used Whirlwind Slash. This wasn't a bad judgment, but it made the sound even louder. Gu Fei didn't want to play the listening game anymore. So, Gu Fei also stopped running. He quickly turned around and lowered his center of gravity. His left arm was in front of him, and his right hand held the sword slightly behind him. Night Battle, 8 Directional 17 Forms. As the name suggested, it was specifically used to deal with enemies at night when one's vision wasn't clear. However, it was important to note that it only meant that one's vision wasn't clear. It meant that one could more or less see the opponent's figure. There was also another point. If it was really a fight at night, then of course, the enemy would also be dark. No one's vision would be clear. It wasn't like Gu Fei's current situation where he was completely blind and his opponent could see everything clearly. However, there was no other way. Gu Fei could only use this move to barely deal with it. The girl saw Gu Fei's strange posture and giggled. "What's going on?" As she spoke, she circled behind Gu Fei. This was the habit of every rogue when they fought. Gu Fei was secretly happy. Just when he felt that the opponent had finished running and was about to rush over, he heard Yutian Shinming shout, "Qianli, behind you." As soon as the girl heard this, she immediately ran back to her original position. Gu Fei was furious, and recklessly shouted into the channel, "What the hell are you yelling for? Shut up." Yutian Shinming was reminding him out of goodwill. He didn't know that Gu Fei was pretending not to know. Night Battle 17 Forms of 8 Directions was actually very sinister. He used the front as a defensive position and the back as an offensive position. This was to use the darkness to fight. If the opponent circled behind him, they would definitely think that a sneak attack was successful. Little did they know that this was the opponent's true attack position. Gu Fei felt that the girl had fallen for his trick. He didn't expect Yutian Shinming to be so helpful. He blindly shouted and made the girl think that he was going to turn around and run again. Gu Fei could only pretend to turn around. The girl once again finished running and rushed behind Gu Fei. She was worried that Yutian Shinming would shout again. Actually, there was no need to do so much for a blind person. It was just that rogue skills were more powerful when used from the back. Skills like backstab couldn't be used if they weren't from the back. It's coming. Gu Fei felt the murderous intent coming from behind him. Chapter 428. Sensing the aura was something that could only be roughly sensed. It was impossible to accurately sense the distance. But at this time, Gu Fei could not care so much. He vaguely felt that his opponent was behind him, so he suddenly turned around and slashed down with his sword. The sword missed. Gu Fei knew that he had either slashed too early or missed his target. But he was not nervous. He immediately followed up with a second slash. The 17 styles of night battle was a continuous attack. The key was to grasp the opponent's position in one move and hit them to death in one go, resolutely not giving the opponent any room to fight back. Gu Fei's first slash missed. He took a step forward and raised his second slash, but it still missed. At this time, he was sure that it was not the distance, but his slash missed. But should he adjust to the left or to the right? Gu Fei was annoyed. Damn, at this critical moment when he really needed help, Yutian Shinming didn't say a word. Who would have thought that when he was thinking left or right, he heard laughter in front of him? It turned out that the girls saw Gu Fei slashing blindly and couldn't help but laugh again. Gu Fei would often miss the sound of the wind created by the fists and kicks during a fight even if he closed his eyes to hear it. But at this moment, how could Gu Fei be mistaken when he heard such a clear and bright laughter? He immediately adjusted to the third move. The girl was still laughing. Suddenly, a sword light flashed in front of her, and her laughter stopped. She was really blocked by the sword move. Because Gu Fei's sword had actually touched her mouth. It couldn't be helped. Who asked the sound to come from this place? Gu Fei's attack was so accurate, and the situation was so critical. There was no time to think so much. The girl was scared out of her wits. She didn't even dare to move. But Gu Fei didn't know that his move had such a terrible effect. He only felt that he had stabbed something. Then he pulled back his sword. The fourth move, the fifth move, the sixth move. The 17 styles of night battle officially began. Not to mention that the girl was scared out of her wits. Even if she was completely normal, it would be difficult for her to defend or dodge under the cover of Gu Fei's sword move. The sword light flickered, and lightning flashed from time to time. It was only because Gu Fei couldn't see right now that he couldn't unleash the full power of his attacks. Even so, it was enough to finish off this little girl when all 17 styles were used. The sorcerer was anxious when she saw this. She wanted to help, but Yutian Shinming kept harassing her with his class advantage. The sorcerer gritted her teeth helplessly. If it wasn't for the fact that Yutian Shinming's heart had softened because of her beauty, with his skills and profession, it wouldn't have been difficult for him to kill this sorcerer. Just as the little thief girl was about to die under Gu Fei's sword, Gu Fei's attack suddenly stopped. It turned out that his eyes had suddenly recovered at this moment. In the blink of an eye, everything in front of him had become clear. There was not even a transition period. Then, he saw the pale face of the little girl in front of him. Gu Fei thought about it and felt that there was no need to kill her, so he stopped attacking. Even so, she was able to make Gu Fei suffer such a big loss. This little girl was weird, so Gu Fei didn't dare to be careless. Although he stopped attacking, his sword still rested on her shoulder. Don't move. The little girl didn't dare to make a sound. Gu Fei looked back and saw that unscathed in battle's whirlwind slash had also reached its end. He was waving his sword wildly to protect himself. In fact, no one was prepared to attack him at the moment. On the other side, Yutian Xinming and the sorcerer were playing around. Gu Fei looked at them and knew that this was no longer a PK, but a teasing. Seeing Yutian Xinming's excited expression, Gu Fei sighed inwardly. It's such a waste of talent that you're not absorbed by the flowers. Everyone stop, or I'll kill her. Gu Fei finally shouted. Using a hostage to threaten someone didn't seem like a very honorable thing to do, but that also depended on the situation. In this situation, Gu Fei had already killed the thief, and Imperial Divine Him had already killed the mage, so why would I use a hostage to threaten you? I'm giving you a chance. As expected, when the sorcerer heard Gu Fei's shout and saw that the little girl had been restrained, her eyes showed concern and she immediately stopped attacking. Yutian Xinming smiled and ran to Gu Fei's side. Hee, you're so despicable. You can even do this. Gu Fei ignored him. Seeing that the other party had stopped, he withdrew his sword from the little girl's shoulder. It's just a small matter. There's no need to fight and kill. Everyone, disperse. The little girl had probably recovered by now. When she saw that Gu Fei had withdrawn his sword, she quickly ran to the sorcerer's side. She pulled on the sorcerer's sleeve and said, "Sister, quickly kill them." Wow, it's a pair of beautiful sisters. I was wondering why they looked so similar. Yutian Xinming was pleasantly surprised. Gu Fei really wanted to slap him for still paying attention to this. But that little girl didn't seem to know what was good for her. Gu Fei thought as he raised his sword and chanted a lightning spell. A blue light flashed and a bolt of lightning struck the little girl. The little girl's face immediately returned to its previous pale state. Don't be noisy. If you keep this up, I'll kill you. To prevent the little girl from stirring up trouble again, Gu Fei could only threaten her. You're trying to scare me. The little girl's voice had changed, but she was still stubborn. But the sorcerer knew that Gu Fei wasn't trying to scare her. Using dual flame flash to disperse her ice whirlwind was definitely very powerful. Using a lightning spell to instantly kill a thief who was already at death's door wasn't something that could be said casually. Little bamboo, don't say any more. The girl who had been silent finally opened her mouth. She took a piece of bread from her pocket and gave it to the little girl. The little girl didn't say anything. She took the bread and retreated to the side to eat. But from time to time, she would glare hatefully at Gu Fei. Ha, that's good. Gu Fei didn't stand on ceremony. He took out an apple and ate it. Together with Yutian Xinming, he admired the unscathed in battle, who was still blindly hacking away at the thief. This guy was probably too focused and didn't hear the conversation that had already ended. But in the blink of an eye, his eyes had returned to normal. Looking at the expressions of the crowd, he quickly stopped his frenzied slashing. He coughed lightly and struck a handsome pose. He waved his hand and tidied his hair. Then, he put on a solemn and silent expression. Gu Fei really wanted to go over and give him a slap. You're the video mage. No one expected the one to take the initiative to break the silence at this moment would be the cold female sorcerer. Moreover, she had already seen through Gu Fei's identity. Yes, that's me. Gu Fei nodded. Qianli drunk? The other party asked. Gu Fei was startled. He didn't expect this person to even know his name. Of course, this was no longer a secret. Most players in Cloud City knew about it. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that more and more people knew about it. However, this was the first time someone had seen through his identity so thoroughly. Gu Fei was still surprised. You mean the 27149 from before? The girl's words were truly shocking. It wasn't surprising that she knew the video mage's name was Qianli Drunk. However, there weren't many people who could link this to 27149. You're studying me? Gu Fei was surprised. The girl nodded. I've noticed you for a long time. Gu Fei immediately thought of something. Your strange pupil. The girl nodded. Since then, Gu Fei's situation had often become a hot topic in the forums. If someone was really in the mood to study him, it was very likely that they were the same person. It's been hard on you. Gu Fei could only laugh dryly. Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming were very unhappy. Gu Fei had taken all the limelight in front of a beautiful girl. Yutian Shinming was confused. He had suppressed her for so long with his archery. Why didn't she even look at him? As for Unscathed in battle, he was frozen like an idiot before he could even use his 7-foot-long sword. It was hard for him to stand there as if nothing had happened. Actually, he had a little secret in his heart. When they fought earlier, he had said that he would only use one sword. In the end, he had humiliated himself. Unscathed in battle sighed in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He, it's nice to meet you. Gu Fei greeted strange pupil politely and said to Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming, shall we leave first? Leave? Where to? The two of them said in unison. It's better to meet by chance than to invite each other. We don't get to know each other without a fight. Why don't we go in and have a drink? Unscathed in battle was like a poet. That's right. Qianli, you're so ungentlemanly. Yutian Shinming looked at Gu Fei with disdain. In the end, the girl had a sharp eye. Since you guys have something to do, we'll leave first. We'll meet again in the future. Xiao Zhu, let's go. It's fine. We don't have anything to do. We're fine. Isn't that right, Qianli? Unscathed in battle quickly grabbed Gu Fei's shoulder and winked at him. Yutian Shinming also chimed in, that's right. It's fine. Let's have a drink together. Strange pupil looked at the three of them and said, if there's anything you need, you can tell me. Maybe I can help. Is that so? Then have you seen a guy called Jian Nanyu? If you do, tell me. I'm going to kill him. Unscathed in battle continued to hold Gu Fei with one hand and swung his sword with the other. Jian Nanyu? We just met in the tavern, strange pupil said. What? The three of them were shocked. They did not expect Jian Nanyu to be of help. At this moment, it was clear who was putting on an act and who was the real deal. Zhan Wushang stood there in a daze, while Gu Fei anxiously asked, where did he go now? I'm not sure, strange pupil answered. Are you friends with him? Gu Fei asked. No, strange pupil answered quickly. Then you guys are. Gu Fei was confused. We're just business partners. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I wanted to see the equipment of a videographer like you, so I hired them to kill you. Strange pupil continued to look at Gu Fei. Gu Fei scratched his head and looked at Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming. Jian Nanyu wants to kill me. Why didn't I know about it? Yeah, weren't you the one who was hunting him? The two of them were equally confused. Chapter 429. Jian Nanyu wanted to rob Gu Fei, but it was just a plan from the beginning to the end. He tried very hard to make it a reality, but he never had the chance to do so. He didn't even have the time to show his intention clearly before his entire team was wiped out in Sunset City. When he returned to Linshui City, he was ready to give Gu Fei a good blow. However, Gu Fei killed him the moment he got off the boat. Then, he was chased by the entire city and was forced to leave his hometown. How tragic was that? Under such circumstances, who would have guessed that Jian Nanyu still had such thoughts? Therefore, when strange pupil revealed the gossip, Gu Fei, Yutian Shinming, and unscathed in battle were a little confused. Jian Nanyu is so ambitious. Really? Yutian Shinming muttered. In the end, the three of them looked at strange pupil again. Why did she tell them about this? They were really puzzled. In the end, Gu Fei was the one who asked straightforwardly, "Why did you suddenly tell us this? Are you looking for trouble?" Gu Fei said as he clenched the sword in his hand. If strange pupil strongly asked him to kill her, he was willing to help her. Strange pupil looked at him and said, "It seems that you are chasing Jian Nanyu. I want you to know that I hired him to do this, so you can come to me directly. You don't have to trouble him." "Oh." The three of them answered in unison. Then, Gu Fei nodded and said, "Miss, I'm very impressed that you dare to take responsibility for what you've done. However, you misunderstood. I just found out that Jian Nanyu wanted to kill my equipment. I'm chasing him for another reason. Since you didn't hide it from me, I won't hide it from you either. In fact, I was also hired to kill him. I feel very sorry to hear that. If I had known that he wanted to find me, I wouldn't have worked so hard to find him. I could have just found a random place to wait for him." Sigh. Strange. I was stunned by Gu Fei's words. He was about to speak when Gu Fei suddenly said, "By the way, since you're his employer, can you please inform him that I'm here so he can come and kill me?" Strange. I was stunned by Gu Fei's words. Looking at the sincere expression on Gu Fei's face, Strange Eye's cold expression turned into one of extreme embarrassment. She did not know how to answer his request. In the end, she could only say, "I'm afraid I can't help you with this. Just now, Jian Nanyu told me to cancel the mission. He returned the deposit and paid the compensation. You promised him. How can you indulge him like this? If he wants to fight, he fights. If he doesn't want to fight, he doesn't fight. That's too unprofessional." Gu Fei was furious. Strange. I did not know what to say this time. Even the little girl who was munching on her bread was looking at this strange man with a strange way of thinking. "Then do you know where he went?" In desperation, Gu Fei could only ask this. "I don't know." Strange pupil shook his head. Sigh. Gu Fei let out a deep sigh. "What should we do now?" Yutian Shinming asked. "Since we can't find Jian Nanyu right now, why don't we sit down and have a drink?" Unscathed in Battle suggested. "That's a good idea. I support it." Yutian Shinming nodded happily. "Oh, right." Gu Fei suddenly said. "Wow, Qianli has agreed. That's great. Lady, let's have a drink." The two of them were excited. "Get out of my way, you two." Gu Fei was furious. The two of them looked at each other and scratched their heads. Gu Fei continued to speak to Strange Eye, "Since you hired him before, you must know how to do it, right? Can I trouble you to tell me?" Strange Eye was not stupid. When he heard Gu Fei's question, he immediately understood. "You want to lure him out like this?" Gu Fei nodded. Strange Eye said, "I can't help you with that." "Why?" "It's a mutual agreement. They won't reveal their employer's information, and the employer can't reveal their contact details. I think they've already predicted that you'll use this method," Strange Eye said. "This agreement sounds more like a threat," Gu Fei said. "Perhaps. Although I won't ask them to hide it from me, I'll still do what I promised," Strange Eye said. Gu Fei nodded. It turned out that she was a very principled girl. Everyone had their own principles, and it was pointless for others to interfere or criticize them. Gu Fei didn't want to be such a pointless person, so he sighed and said, "If that's the case, then it's fine." It's fine. That's great. Let's go have a drink. Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming cheered. Help yourselves. I'll continue to walk around, Gu Fei said. Oh, good luck, good luck. Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming did not even look at Gu Fei. They wanted Gu Fei to leave, or else the girls would not even look at them. They only cared if the two girls would reject their invitation. Wait, Strange, I suddenly shouted. Gu Fei turned around. I'm confused. I was the one who hired them to loot your equipment. You. Strange, I was confused. Anyone else would be confused too. Even if they did not fight to the death, they should not be as indifferent as Gu Fei, right? Oh, you mean that. Gu Fei turned around again, and his answer embarrassed Strange pupil once again. Thank you very much for hiring someone to fight with me. If you do this again, I hope you won't hire someone as uncultured as Jian Nanyu. Find someone who is persistent and has a fighting spirit. Thank you. You. Strange, I was speechless. Gu Fei turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly turned back. By the way, you still want to see my equipment, right? Here it comes. Strange, I was shocked. He realized that Gu Fei was still going to attack him. He immediately prepared himself to dodge Gu Fei's spell. However, Gu Fei rummaged around in his pocket and took out a small notebook and a pen. He held the night streamer under his arm and held the notebook with one hand and the pen with the other. When everyone was still confused, he was already done. He tore the piece of paper from the notebook and handed it to Strange Eye like a business card. This is the attributes of my equipment. Take it back and admire it. Strange Eye's mind was already blank. He subconsciously took the piece of paper and held it in front of his eyes. The data listed on it should have made any player scream, but his mind was in a mess. He could not see what was in front of him. I'm leaving. Gu Fei waved at Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming. Keep an eye on Yutian. Don't lose him. Aya, hurry up and leave. Yutian Shinming pushed Gu Fei away. How could he say such things in front of a beautiful woman? It was ruining his image. Gu Fei turned around and left. Not long after, he disappeared into the fog. Strange, I was still holding the piece of paper in a daze. The little girl came up to look at it and exclaimed, "That's amazing." Is he bragging? Strange, I woke up from his daze. He was shocked when he saw what was in front of him. Needless to say, the Dark Moonlight Sword's high physical damage and high magic damage, the large list of additional attributes were dazzling. As for the Moonlight Knight Spirit Robe, the most eye-catching attribute was the Magic Proficiency +1 that Gu Fei didn't understand at the start, and Imperial Divine Ming didn't understand either. It was not uncommon for equipment to have spell mastery attributes, but most of them were in the form of percentages. After much research by sorcerers, the attribute not only increased the number of magic classes, but it also increased the proficiency of the player's spells. The higher the proficiency of a spell, the more powerful it would be. The spell mastery attribute increased the power of a player's spells by increasing the proficiency of a spell. It could be said that it was the literal meaning of spell mastery. Since the proficiency of a spell increased with the use of the spell, and there was no upper limit to it, it was easy to imagine that the higher the proficiency, the more useful the spell mastery would be. Hence, this attribute was one of the best attributes that all sorcerers would pursue. As for Gu Fei's +1, Yutian Shinming's deduction was right. 1 meant 100%. In other words, if Gu Fei's dual flame flash had 2000 proficiency, then when he wore the Moonlight Robe, he could actually unleash the power of 4000 proficiency. Although the increase in proficiency did not mean that the damage would be doubled, the effect was definitely terrifying. Strange, I did not know if there would be even more insane attributes like +2 or +3 in the game. At the moment, +1 was the highest that could be achieved. The Moonlight Robe could be worn for the rest of his life with just +1 in spell mastery. Sister, this can't be real, right? The little girl asked after looking at the attributes of the two pieces of equipment. Both of you, this is definitely real. Unbeknownst to them, Imperial Shinming had already walked up to them. He had seen Gu Fei's equipment with his own eyes, so he naturally had a photographic memory. He casually scanned through a few of the items written on the piece of paper, and knew that it was all true. Moreover, he also knew that Gu Fei wasn't someone who would use fake stats to scare people, so he began to pat his chest and vouch for Gu Fei. More importantly, he had finally found the right time to talk to the girls. Come, let's go in and have a drink while we talk. Unscathed in battle was also an expert at seizing opportunities. At this time, Gu Fei was visiting the next tavern. If there was a customer like Strange Eye here, there might be another one. Perhaps they would choose to come here to settle the matter here. As Gu Fei thought about this, he told the others about what had happened in the mercenary channel, especially the idea of getting Jian Nanyo's contact information to lure him out. It was obvious that they would need to rely on Brother Yu. Only his intelligence and connections would be able to take on such a huge responsibility. Although with his understanding of Jian Nanyu, he did not think that Jian Nanyu would fall for such a predictable trap. However, since it was not a big deal, Brother Yu immediately asked his friends to find out more about it. Chapter 430. In the end, Gu Fei had visited all 11 taverns in Xia Fog City. These 11 taverns were located in 11 different areas of Xia Fog City. Gu Fei had visited almost all of Xia Fog City. Unfortunately, he did not see Wandering Sword's party, be it the system or the players, the lobby, or the private rooms. He asked some players, but there was no news. No one had seen a party with such a class composition. Sword Demon also sent news that he had visited all 7 resurrection points and asked people from time to time, but to no avail. I can only rely on Brother Yu. Gu Fei thought as he walked out of the last tavern. Looking up, the building opposite the tavern was very familiar and amiable. It was Xia Wu City's wanted mission office. Gu Fei had nothing to do at the moment. He also happened to have the PK points that he had accumulated when he helped Jian Nanyu and the others escape from Linshui City. Hence, he conveniently began his career of washing PK points. Perhaps he would bump into that guy in the process. Gu Fei thought optimistically. At this time, in the small tavern that Gu Fei had first stepped into, Yutian Shinming, unscathed in battle, and the Strange Eye sisters were sitting around a table. They had become familiar with each other. After the introduction, Strange Eye's sister was Yen Xiaozhu, one of the 7 idol players of the week. The two of them were real sisters, and they were old players who had entered the game during the open beta. However, the main city that they were born in during the open beta was completely random. Even though they were sisters, they were mercilessly separated by the system. They had only reunited recently. Unscathed in battle had bumped into the two of them on the street and immediately asked for directions to strike up a conversation with them. For a pair of beautiful sisters, whether it was in real life or in the game, they were already used to this kind of conversation. The two of them did not think much of it and were prepared to leave it at that. However, Unscathed in battle continued to pester them. He even said to Yen Xiaozhu, "Little girl, do you want uncle to bring you to train?" This made Strange Eye furious, and he was prepared to punish her. In actual combat, Wu Shang wasn't such a lascivious person. He purposely did this to provoke the other party to attack him. Then, he could easily take down the two of them by himself. He would display his demeanor as a master and leave a deep impression on the beautiful woman. He did not know which lousy novel he had read to pick up girls. He did not know if it would work, but he was definitely unlucky. One of the two girls he met was a 5 strong players, and the other was a 7 idol players of the week. In the end, he was taken down by the 2 girls. It was a disgrace to the world of girls. In reality, with Unscathed in battle's strength, he had a 50-50 chance of winning if he were to fight seriously. However, he wanted to act like an expert and look down on the 2 sisters. Strange Eye's 5 strong players of the week was no joke. She immediately used her unique spell, 9 Dragons Ice Chamber, and froze and scathed in battle like an idiot. Fortunately, Gu Fei and Imperial Sky Shinming appeared just in time. Otherwise, whether he would have died here today would have been in the hands of the two sisters. Now that they were sitting together, the two sisters were initially prejudiced against and scathed in battle. However, after Yutian Shinming asked them about it, and unscathed in battle explained it from such a perspective, the two sisters were both annoyed and amused. If girls could fall for him so easily, why would there be so many leftover men and women in this world? Yan Xiaozhu was obviously more cheerful and lively than her sister, Strange Eye. She was already laughing at unscathed in battle's lousy way of picking up girls. However, for Zhang Wushang to be able to use such a tactic to pick up girls, it was clear that his pride was his greatest weapon. There was absolutely no mockery in this world that could defeat him. At this moment, he coughed twice and said seriously, "Now that everyone is sitting together happily, let's not talk about fighting and killing anymore." Yutian Shinming was even more quick-witted. When he heard Yan Xiaozhu laughing at unscathed in battle's lust for picking up girls, he immediately seized the opportunity and asked an impure question, "Then, how should I pick up girls? How could a young girl like Yan Xiaozhu have any experience in this kind of thing?" In fact, she was just like unscathed in battle. She had read all sorts of romance novels and stories about the moods of men and women, and came up with some specious theoretical knowledge. Now, she was like a love expert giving lessons to the two of them. Therefore, the three of them chatted happily on this topic. Strange Eye just listened quietly and did not interrupt. Although his expression was no longer as cold as before, there was still no smile on his face. Unscathed in battle and Yutian Shinming did not dare to provoke him. Fortunately, his sister was lively enough. While they were chatting happily, the curtain of the fourth private room was suddenly rolled up. Drifting and the other two walked out, obviously having had enough to drink and were ready to leave. Unscathed in battle was facing this direction. When he saw Drifting, he quickly greeted him. Drifting came over to greet him as well. Yutian Shinming turned his face to the side and pretended to be arrogant. However, Yan Xiaozhu was very surprised when she turned her head. "Brother Drifting." Drifting was also surprised to see her. "Huh, it's you. You know each other?" Unscathed in battle was surprised. Yan Xiaozhu pulled Strange Eye and said, "Sister, he's Drifting, the one who helped me in Stormwind City." Strange Eye stood up and thanked Drifting for his help. Drifting waved his hand and said, "Ha, you're welcome. So you're Xiaozhu's sister, Strange Eye." Strange Eye nodded. "My sister often talks about you. She says she knows the best sorcerer. She's very proud. You're flattering me." Drifting quickly acted humble. However, Yutian Shinming, whose eyes were not looking over, interrupted, "The best sorcerer. Is she talking about you?" "Of course not. Where's Qinli?" Drifting said. What he meant was, not me, and of course not you. Speak of the devil. The door of the tavern opened, and the black-robed sorcerer walked in. He kicked over a bench violently and hit the table with his sword. He pointed at someone and said, "Wanted quest. Get out of here if you have nothing to do." Wow, I haven't seen this in a long time. Yutian Shinming sighed. He had experienced this many times with Gu Fei when he was farming for the Windchaser boots. Yeah. Drifting was also emotional. He and Gu Fei had gotten to know each other from a similar situation. Clearly, Gu Fei was not famous in Dawn Fog City. His shout immediately caused a strong reaction. The four people at the table stood up and prepared to fight. The other players around them also stood up and dodged. The room was small, and the skills did not have eyes. If they were touched and died, who could they go to? The onlookers quickly formed a group and sized up the arrogant sorcerer curiously. The four people also shouted, "Kid, what are you doing?" They had seen people doing wanted quests before, but they had never seen anyone doing a wanted quest so loudly. Bounty quest. Gu Fei reminded him again, and then flew up. Amidst the screams, flames, whirlwinds, flying arrows. All kinds of skills were displayed in the small space. Strange Eye grabbed her staff and was about to help, but she saw Gu Fei's two friends, Yutian Xinming and Unscathed in Battle, were sitting calmly, drinking and eating peanuts as if nothing had happened. The sorcerer, drifting, had no intention of helping either. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and was enjoying the show. Strange Eye was confused, but when she turned back to look at the battlefield, she understood what was going on. While she was thinking about it, Gu Fei had already taken care of the wanted target. He took 2 steps back and knocked on a table, shouting, "Mission over." "You're welcome, but I don't recommend you to take revenge." There were 4 people left, and they were obviously shocked by Gu Fei's lightning-fast attack. Gu Fei had appeared in front of them in the blink of an eye, and the 4 of them had dodged their attacks. Then, with one slash, the 4 of them were down to 1. "Kid, don't leave if you dare. Just you wait." The 3 of them did not dare to act rashly. They stomped their feet and ran out of the tavern. Gu Fei did not stop them. He put his sword back into his pocket and walked toward Yutian Xinming. "I'm drinking." As he spoke, he grabbed a stool and sat down. He grabbed a few peanuts and started eating. He then turned to Drifting. "Why are you standing there? Aren't you going to continue the quest?" Yutian Xinming asked. "Didn't you hear him tell me to wait here?" Gu Fei kicked Yutian Xinming. "Move to the side, let him sit too." If it were someone else, Yutian Xinming would have let him sit, but Drifting refused. Drifting did not ask for trouble. He smiled at them and said, "You guys sit. I have something to do, so I'm leaving." "Something? What is it? Do you need help?" Yan Xiaozhu stood up. She seemed eager to repay Drifting's kindness. Drifting smiled helplessly. "I'm just being polite. It's nothing, but I have to go." Go. I won't see you out." Yutian Xinming was getting impatient. "Call me if you need anything," Drifting said to Gu Fei. "No, call me if you need anything," Gu Fei said. Drifting smiled helplessly again and left. Yutian Xinming let out a long sigh. He looked like he was relieved. Life is great. They continued chatting, but Yan Xiaozhu's attitude toward Yutian Xinming was much colder. She had clearly seen through Yutian Xinming's attitude toward Drifting, so she stood firmly on Drifting's side. She did not like Yutian Xinming anymore. Yutian Xinming felt depressed, and his resentment toward Drifting increased. Gu Fei and Strange Eye just sat there and did not speak. Looking at them, he felt that they were really childish. Then looking at Unscathed in Battle, he felt that it would be great if this guy was older. He could be described as old and disrespectful. After a while, Gu Fei had almost finished Unscathed in Battle's plate of peanuts. He looked at the time and said, "What's going on? I said to wait, but no one came. Do the players in Xia Fog City like to joke around?" Then he poured the remaining peanuts into his palm and slapped the wind-chasing emblem. "I'm going too." There was a flash of white light, and Gu Fei teleported away. Strange Eye and Yan Xiaozhu were stunned. Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Xinming explained helplessly, he went to continue with the wanted quest. Gu Fei returned to the wanted quest office. There was a flash of white light, and he finally stepped into the realm of level 41. At the same time, there was a system notification. The special reward for the wanted quest was triggered again. Chapter 431. Following the system notification, the first thing that was announced was the mission condition that Gu Fei had achieved, 300 wanted players, and it was emphasized that it was 300 people with no duplicate IDs. The second condition was relatively insignificant. There were many players in the game, and it was not so coincidental to always run into the same person on a wanted mission. In Gu Fei's career as a wanted criminal, he had not seen many accidents like this. They were all in Cloud City. After the conditions were announced, it was time to give out the reward. Gu Fei thought that it would be the vulgar Windchaser XX again, but this time the system had a new idea and gave him a wanted license. This thing was not a piece of equipment, but a mission item, and it was also used for wanted missions. According to the instructions, when accepting a wanted mission, show the wanted license to the management NPC of the wanted office, and you would be able to see the hidden information that normal players could not see during the process of looking up the mission. It was limited to the user. Gu Fei touched his pocket, and there was indeed a hardcover book in the blank space. He took it out and looked at it. It was black, and the words, "Wanted License," were written in silver font on the cover. He flipped it open, and on the left page was a badge. A thorny thorn wound into the shape of a shackle. This badge was familiar to Gu Fei, as all the wanted offices' door signs had this pattern. As for the right page, the first line was the license number, 1, the second line was the holder's name, Chinli 1 Drunk, the third line was the holder's profession, Mage. Gu Fei seemed to have realized something. It turned out that he was now a VIP user of the wanted mission office. This pass was specially issued to encourage him. Therefore, Gu Fei wanted to see what kind of special treatment he would receive as a VIP. After waving the ID at the NPC, he clearly saw the NPC nod at him. When he accepted the mission, he saw the legendary hidden information. What was hidden information? Player's name, profession. At this time, in Gu Fei's eyes, the large number of wanted players listed in the mission office were no longer just numbers and PK value. Each number had a name and profession behind it. This made Gu Fei overjoyed. The first thing he thought of was that he could use this to find out the whereabouts of Blade. But after flipping through it for a while, he felt dizzy. Killing people in the game was not against the law. Instead, it was a great pleasure. In a main city with tens of thousands of people, there were usually thousands of people killed. A main city like Moonlit Night City, which had a strong culture, was even larger. At that moment, Gu Fei didn't know if Jian Nanyu and the others were registered in Xiaowu City. Anyway, he just casually looked through the city's quests. A long string of numbers, names, and occupations made Gu Fei dizzy. It was a pity that the way the quest list was arranged was the same. It could only be arranged according to the PK value from high to low. If only it could be arranged by name. I wonder if I can search it. Gu Fei thought to himself. Now that he could look up names, he could just type Jian Nanyu to pull out his quest. This was very logical. Thinking of this, Gu Fei went to ask the NPC. At first, he was worried that the NPC wouldn't understand what he was asking. Who knew that the NPC would understand once he heard it? The NPC told Gu Fei, "Your wanted license level is not high enough." Gu Fei was stunned. Only then did he understand. It turned out that he was also a beginner VIP. There were higher user levels and privileges. Thinking about it, didn't the wind-chasing emblem upgrade when the quest was completed 200 times? It seemed that this wanted license would also increase when he reached 600 people on the wanted list. This was obviously not something that could be done in one go. Moreover, who knew if the next upgrade would be the search function? Gu Fei sighed. He went back and continued to look through the quests in order. This method was a bit stupid, but it was a test of patience. He was afraid that those people didn't have PK value now. That would be a complete waste of time. However, he was more afraid that after he found the part with PK value of 2, this guy would suddenly kill 3 people and with a whoosh, his PK value would increase to 3. That would be even worse. He couldn't be that unlucky, right? Gu Fei thought as he continued to look. He stood foolishly at the wanted mission board for more than half an hour. Gu Fei checked through the wanted mission board of Xia Fog City from top to bottom. None of the names of Jian Nan and the others that he knew were on the list. Could it be that they didn't register here? Gu Fei thought. Unfortunately, Xia Fog City didn't provide Linshui City's wanted mission board. Overall mission board? Gu Fei turned around and left the wanted mission board. Checking the overall mission board was an impossible task. A conservative estimate of the number of players on the board was over 100,000. He greeted everyone in the mercenary group channel. Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle were encouraging the strange pupil sisters to be their tour guides and guide them to familiarize themselves with the situation here. Of course, this was just an excuse. The two were just trying to extend their time with the girls. As for Sword Demon, after running past the revival point without being discovered, he had already started doing quests in the city. He earned experience while continuing to inquire about Jian Nan and the others' whereabouts. As expected of the most diligent and responsible person in the group. As soon as Brother Yu asked him to inquire about information, he went offline again and still hadn't returned. Han family young master was still sitting in the tavern. Gu Fei felt that this guy was always in the tavern. He really didn't know how this kind of person could become one of the top 10 priests. Was he worthy of the other priests who worked themselves to death as nannies? How is it? Any news on Jian Nan? This person sat in the tavern and did nothing, acting like a boss. Gu Fei didn't hear back from the first tavern. The moment he sent a message, Han family young master asked him to report on his work. There's nothing else. Gu Fei said. There was silence. We can't even confirm if they are registered in Xia Fog City. Gu Fei was furious. If he could confirm Jian Nan's registered address, Gu Fei felt that with the wanted license in his hand, he would be able to catch Jian Nan sooner or later as long as he was patient. They were in the business of robbing, so it was impossible for them not to have PK points. Furthermore, he was doing wanted quests every day. If he searched for Jian Nan for half an hour every day, he would definitely bump into Jian Nan. When did he meet up with the strange eye? Asked the son of the Han family. Gu Fei didn't ask strange pupil this question. Naturally, he asked Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shinming, who were still stuck to the strange pupil sisters. Strange pupil didn't hide anything and told them the truth. It was around 8:20. Jian Nan's group of 7 arrived at the waterfront at 6:03 and left at 6:09. We walked for 1 hour and 47 minutes from the waterfront to Xia Fog City. Jian Nan's group might be more familiar with the route than we are, so we can save some time. Sword Demon, how long does it take to walk from the city gate to the nearest resurrection point? Han family young master asked. About 10 minutes, Sword Demon said. We left the shore at 6:09, so they walked for 1 hour and 40 minutes. They arrived at Xia Fog City at 7:49 and registered at the resurrection point at 8. They went to the tavern where they met strange pupil 20 minutes later. Time seems a little tight, Han family young master said. Did they arrive at the tavern first or did strange pupil arrive first? Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shinming asked again. Strange pupil arrived first. What time did they meet? How did they meet? What time did they arrive at the tavern and what time did they leave? Han family young master asked again. You can ask them yourself. Unscathed in Battle and Yutian Shinming were very depressed. They were questioning a girl like she was a criminal. How were they supposed to woo her? Qianli, you go. Han family young master acted like a boss again. Why me? Gu Fei didn't want to do the job of recording someone's statement. Because you're the one who wants to kill Jian Nan to earn money, not me, Han family young master said. Gu Fei had no choice but to go to the tavern himself. Yutian Shinming and Unscathed in Battle had already foreshadowed this for him. They told strange pupil that Gu Fei would ask her some questions in the future. Ahem. Gu Fei still felt a little uncomfortable after meeting strange pupil. He sat down and cleared his throat. I have a few simple questions about Jian Nan to ask you. Do I have the right to remain silent? Strange pupil asked. You don't have to say it if you don't want to, Gu Fei said. Strange pupil nodded. Gu Fei then asked, what time did Jian Nan meet you? 8 o'clock. How did you meet him? I was in the tavern at the time, so I asked him to come. What time did he arrive here? Gu Fei asked. Around 8:20. What time did he leave? 5 minutes later. Fuck. Gu Fei slammed the table. Strange pupil seemed to understand. Then you arrived in less than 5 minutes. That's right. Gu Fei wanted to cry, but no tears came out. It turned out that he and Jian Nan had almost bumped into each other. On the other side of the channel, the young master of the Han family, who was listening to the live broadcast of the Imperial Divine Cry, had already made a conclusion. He has an appointment with Strange Pupil at 8 and will be at the tavern 20 minutes later. From the looks of it, it seems like he has already registered at the revival point. That's right, Gu Fei said. But that doesn't mean they will stay here for a long time. They might have already left. Han family's young master said. Left. When Gu Fei heard this word, he suddenly remembered something. He stood up and ran to the entrance of the tavern. The others did not know what he was doing, so they followed him. Gu Fei looked to the left and right of the tavern. He looked at unscathed in battle. Wu Shang, you came from this way, right? Gu Fei pointed to the street on the right. Unscathed in battle nodded. Yu Tian and I came from this way. Gu Fei pointed to the left. When we came, we did not see Jian Nan. Are there any crossings between these two streets? Gu Fei asked Strange Pupil. There are 2 crossings. Strange Pupil pointed to the left and right. The one on the left goes north and the one on the right goes south. Where do these 2 streets lead to? Gu Fei asked. The one on the right is a normal alley. I don't know where it leads to. The one on the left goes north and you will reach the mercenary building, Strange Pupil said. Gu Fei immediately pushed Yutian Xinming. Go to that alley and ask around. Yutian Xinming's face turned pale. Are you asking me to die? Gu Fei was stunned for a moment. Then, he realized that he was an idiot on the way here. Making him move alone would make him wish he was dead. So, he pushed Zhang Wushang and said, the 2 of you go together. The 2 obviously did not have enough to chat with the girl. But now that they had something to do, it was not appropriate for them to refuse. They immediately headed in that direction. As for Gu Fei, he thanked Strange Eye and hurried towards the path on the left that led to the mercenary building. One of the 2 roads was the one that Jian Nan you must have taken. Perhaps he had left some traces. Gu Fei thought. Chapter 432. In the mercenary building of Xiaoyu City, Jian Nan Yu and his group of 7 were looking through missions. They were looking for missions posted by players. For example, they were looking for help in PK or killing for loot. It wasn't common for a big business like Video Mage Equipment to happen. Jian Nan Yu and his group often did some small business to earn some money. More importantly, it was to accumulate customers. Jian Nan Yu's way of doing business was to start with these small missions to gain a certain degree of trust and contact with the customers. Once there was a big business, the other party would naturally think of him. And in the process of small business dealings, Jian Nan Yu would add each customer as a friend, and then carefully note down the business dealings between each customer and himself. These were the leverage he used to ensure a harmonious relationship between both parties. Jian Nan Yu was indeed hated for killing and robbing, but don't forget that every time he did such a business, there must be someone behind the scenes controlling it. He was just a knife, and the hands holding the knife behind the scenes were no better than him. Jian Nan Yu had sharpened his knife into a double-edged sword. He kept the possibility of retaliation at any time. The agreement he made with each customer was to remind them that he also had leverage over them. Jian Nan Yu's business network was gradually expanding with this as the foundation. The way to contact him to do business was really simple. It was just a private message. Jian Nan Yu would never refuse the requests of the players who entered the client group in his friend list. This was because Jian Nan Yu had information on these people. He believed that everyone could betray others, but they would never betray themselves. These customers were Jian Nanyu's main source of income. However, if he wanted his business to flourish, the bigger the customer group, the better. Jian Nanyu had two ways. One was for the big customers in the customer group to directly introduce customers to him. The other was to find customers himself, like in the initial stage. Then, he would slowly develop from a small customer to a big customer, and finally enter the customer's friend list. This development process was actually the process of Jian Nanyu using leverage over others. At the moment, in the mercenary building, they were looking for small customers who had the potential to become big customers. Their business was initially established by this method. They had accumulated a set of experience in identifying potential small customers. The quest content was rather vague. It wasn't a group quest, but an individual quest. Most importantly, one had to be rich. Poor players weren't qualified to become Southbound Sword's customer. At this time, the 7 of them were rummaging around, and from time to time, they would discuss in the channel. As a group, it was not uncommon for people to stick to their own opinions. Among the 7 of them, Azuma, Flaming Cloak, and Blackwater were leaning towards the one who was looking for equipment. Glue and another cleric were leaning towards the one who was looking for help in PvP. Inokagami and Lucky Knight were leaning towards the one who had a normal quest but a generous reward. Thus, the 3 targets had been identified. After memorizing their contact information, the 7 of them prepared to leave. They did not directly accept the mission at the mercenary building because the 7 of them were not mercenary groups and did not have the authority to do so. The fog was still as thick as ever. The 7 of them stepped out of the mercenary building and took a deep breath. They suddenly felt as if they had been reborn. Then let's begin. Azuma took out the list that he had just copied and said, Blackwater, you and Flaming Cloak will contact this peach. Inokagami and I will look for this soft hands. The 3 of you will look for this. Damn, what is this word? Ha, you're so uncultured. Finally escaping from the hunting net, they were in a good mood and started joking. Glue laughed at Azuma. He took the piece of paper and his face turned green. He passed it to the next person, and the next person's face turned green. Azuma turned his head and looked at Flaming Cloak. What did you write? Flaming Cloak was the one who had copied the name. Flaming Cloak said helplessly, I just copied it. This is how the Martian language is. I don't recognize it. What the hell is this? Blackwater held the piece of paper and squinted his eyes, as if he was hoping that the sunlight would give him strength. In the end, the 7 of them shook their heads awkwardly. They could not enter the name into the search bar since they did not recognize it. Naturally, they could not find this player. In the end, Jian Nan handed the note back to Horini. Peach, let the 3 of them look for her. You 2 go look for this Martian. The other 2 groups gloated at Blackwater and Flaming Coat while contacting the people they were looking for. However, neither Peach nor Soft-Hearted Hands added her as a friend. It was a common situation, so the 2 groups went to the mailbox to send the letter, leaving Blackwater and Fire Blazing Clothes to read the letter. Let's not talk about recognizing it. Even if you do, how did you type it? Hualini asked. How would I know? Blackwater was annoyed. We have to ask around. Huarini said. Look, there's a pretty girl over there. Blackwater pointed somewhere. Apart from being a robber, Wandering Sword's group of 7 were no different from normal players. They also had hobbies. For example, picking up girls was an extremely popular activity in the game. There was no lack of enthusiasts among the 7 of them. Starting from this pretty girl, Horini and Blackwater began to ask pitifully everyone they met along the way. In the end, not only did no one recognize them, they even received looks of disdain from others. For the sake of their career, they endured everything. The 2 of them clenched their fists and continued to search for the meaning of the Martian words. After walking down a long street, the two of them found nothing. Their mouths were dry. Let's go to the tavern for a drink. There are many people there, and we can ask around too, Blackwater suggested. Yes, and I think we should find the right solution. This kind of words is what non-mainstream people are good at, so we should ask the non-mainstream people. Look, it was unwise of you to ask that old man, Huolini said. That old man pretended to know it. It's fine if he doesn't recognize it, but he insisted that it's Oracle Bone script, Blackwater said. What input method can we use to input Oracle Bone script? Huolini asked. I don't know. Blackwater shook her head. The two of them chatted as they walked. Along the way, they met other players who might know something about the Oracle Bone script, but they still found nothing. Finally, they were about to reach the tavern. They hadn't met anyone along the way. The street was empty, and it was surrounded by thick fog. As foreigners, the two of them weren't used to this scene, and they felt uncomfortable all over. It's been a while, Blackwater said. Yeah. Huolini looked around. Finally, a dark figure appeared in the fog, and the two of them were delighted. Look, someone is finally here, Blackwater exclaimed. Who cares? Let's go and ask, Huolini said. The two of them didn't talk to anyone for a long time. As they quickened their pace, the fog became transparent, and the dark figure appeared in front of them. Blackwater held the note in her hand and wanted to use swift movement to meet the figure. However, the moment their eyes met, the two of them stopped. One of them was surprised, while the other was delighted. Gu Fei was very happy. He had only walked a few steps after leaving the tavern. How did they meet again so soon? Did Jian Nanyu leave such a huge trace after leaving the tavern? However, the two of them didn't seem to be the ones he wanted. Why are you here? Huolini and Blackwater said in unison. They had been cautious along the way. Glue was so tired that his eyes were about to bleed, and he was sure that no one was following them. After all, binoculars were something that the players didn't know existed in the game. Hee, what a coincidence. Where's Jian Nanyu? Gu Fei said. Huolini and Blackwater didn't say anything, but they quickly notified the other members of the group, that bitch is here again. Jian Nanyu, who received this news, wanted to cry but had no tears. As far as he was concerned, he hadn't done anything to Gu Fei at all. Why was this fellow pestering him endlessly? Can the two of you escape? Jian Nan's tone was filled with pessimism, directly using the word escape. It's difficult. Huolini said. Ever since they witnessed Gu Fei's 900 degrees dual blaze flash at the shore of Waterside City, they finally understood how terrifying Gu Fei was. Even if the seven of them were to fight him head-on, they still felt that their chances of winning were slim. They had to resort to some unorthodox tricks to defeat him. Jian Nanyu finally decided to give up on the mission of looting Gu Fei's equipment. This was because looting equipment was a long-term and arduous task. He did not know how many times he would have to kill Gu Fei in the process. Every time, he would need to make meticulous arrangements and clever arrangements. Jian Nanyu felt that he was not a genius enough to come up with such a complex formation. After weighing the pros and cons, he finally decided to give up. It was too risky to deal with Gu Fei, and they could easily be trapped by him if they entered the market rashly. As such, they might as well give up on the mission. But now, it seemed that they had already been trapped by Gu Fei. They had actually chased him all the way here. What do you want? Huolini roared. Blackwater felt a chill down her spine. Huolini used a sentence commonly used in idol dramas. Even though they were facing a powerful enemy and their levels were at stake, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Gu Fei didn't notice it and said calmly, I'm looking for Jian Nanyu. Where is he? Oh, he went to the west gate, Huolini said casually. Is that so? Gu Fei smiled. Is it convenient for him to come over? I don't think it's convenient, Huolini said. Why? Because he doesn't want to see you. Does he want to see you at the revival point? I wonder if he's going to the Mage Academy or the Rogue Guild, Gu Fei threatened. Even though they didn't want to die, there was nothing they could do. Whatever you want. Gu Fei unsheathed his sword, but the two of them wouldn't close their eyes and wait for death. Huolini pushed Blackwater away. You run. I'll block him. Blackwater was a rogue after all, and she could escape from Gu Fei's clutches with quick movement. As for Huolini, she would talk about it in the next chapter. Chapter 433. The sword-wielding Gu Fei quickly closed the distance between the two. Huolini quickly raised his staff to chant, but, Fire Beacon City, right? I know. Gu Fei answered for him. Huolini was ashamed. He only fought against Gu Fei a few times, yet his tricks were all seen through. Although there was nothing new about it, he still had to use it. Fire Beacon City, rise. Huolini shouted. Since he was seen through by the opponent, there was no need to hide it anymore. He shouted it out loud to increase the momentum. After the chant, a wall of fire appeared behind Gu Fei. Then, Gu Fei waved his sword and pointed, wall of electricity. Huolini's face was full of tears. So it turned out that no one had any new tricks. He looked back and saw that Blackwater's path of retreat was blocked by the wall of electricity, so he could only look back at Huolini. Time to go all out. Huolini roared as he lunged at Gu Fei. He felt that Gu Fei was too powerful and couldn't be defeated with conventional methods, so he had to use unconventional methods. For a mage, the unconventional method was to not use spells and instead use physical combat. Thus, Huolini rushed towards Gu Fei while swinging his fists. The ending of Huoqiani was so sad that even the author did not have the heart to continue describing it. Gu Fei felt angry when he saw the mad dog's behavior. How could the punches and kicks be so disorderly? Therefore, Gu Fei stepped forward and beat Huolini up with a few punches and kicks in a very methodical manner. The pitiful Huolini waved his hands around in the beginning, but later on, he could only use his arms to protect his face. It was a great pain to be able to survive such a beating. Gu Fei was tired of fighting with Huolini. With a casual push of his hand and a hook of his leg, Huolini was flipped upside down. Ignoring Huolini, Gu Fei turned around and ran towards the Blackwater. Gu Fei's electric wall didn't last as long as Huolini's Fire Beacon City, and it also didn't have a short cooldown, so he had to hurry up and deal with Blackwater. However, Blackwater knew that they were no match for Huoqiani, so they didn't try to risk their lives. After all, Huoqiani's miserable ending was still there. Blackwater used his agile footwork to move back and forth in the small space between Fire Beacon City and the electric wall. He was determined to not let Gu Fei get close to him. Gu Fei's speed was slightly slower than Blackwater's. He seemed to be at his wit's end and could only deal with him patiently. Blackwater ran back and forth. Seeing that Gu Fei was exasperated but couldn't do anything to her, she suddenly felt very happy. It seemed that this guy wasn't that scary. If the glue was here, wouldn't the kite be killed? Blackwater became excited as he thought about it. He felt that he might have found a way to take care of Gu Fei. At this time, the electric wall flashed and disappeared. Blackwater thought that it was time to escape, but Blackwater looked at Huolini on the ground. This guy was motionlessly lying on the ground as if he was dead. At this time, Huolini slightly raised his head and glanced at Blackwater, then he signaled towards the direction of the electric wall. You want me to run over there? Blackwater was ready to run away after the electric current wall disappeared, so he tried his best to stay near the electric current wall. Now that the opportunity was right in front of him, he found that Huolini's eyes were conveying this message to him. Blackwater was a bit puzzled, but he quickly noticed that even though Huolini was still lying on the ground, the staff in his hand was quietly pointing in a certain direction. In the blink of an eye, Blackwater understood Huolini's intention and immediately ran towards the direction of the electric wall. Gu Fei still chased after him, but he didn't know that Huolini was quietly finishing his chant. Fire Beacon City. Another electric wall appeared behind Gu Fei, accompanied by Blackwater's laughter. This was Huolini's idea. After luring Gu Fei over, he would use another Fire Beacon City to separate himself from Gu Fei. This way, he would have enough time to escape. Even though Gu Fei could teleport, it was clear that his technique was still on cooldown or he didn't have enough mana. In short, if he could use it, why would he need to run and play with Blackwater like this? As for He Shui, even though he was separated from Gu Fei, at this moment, the first Fire Beacon City was about to disappear. He Shui only needed to stall for a bit longer before he could escape with his speed. Cloud Mist City was shrouded in fog, so escaping was much easier than chasing. Thus, the two of them would be safe and sound. Naturally, this was the best outcome. Brat, you didn't expect this, right? Blackwater proudly laughed while running towards the first Fire Beacon City. On the other side, Huolini leisurely crawled up from the ground and confidently snapped his fingers at Blackwater. Old Black, that electric wall will disappear in 7 seconds. Get ready, I'll be going first. Go. Blackwater purposely loudly answered and turned around to provoke Gu Fei. Gu Fei was also looking at him with a smile. This smile really shouldn't appear on the face of someone who was being teased. Blackwater was a bit absent-minded, but he heard Gu Fei say, "You are about to die, why are you still so happy?" Die? Blackwater sneered and didn't care. Everything was calculated very clearly. Gu Fei wouldn't be able to catch up to him before the electric wall disappears. In front of such an obvious fact, this guy was still bluffing, truly senseless. Blackwater silently counted in his mind, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. According to his estimation, it would only take 2 seconds for the electric wall to disappear. It was only 2 seconds, he could easily make it through. While rushing towards the electric wall, Blackwater looked back and saw that Gu Fei was also chasing after him. Keep your distance, don't panic, he can't catch up. Blackwater subconsciously became a bit anxious and quickly reminded himself. Then, he saw Gu Fei stretch out his left hand towards him, a cluster of lightning gathering in his palm. What is this? Blackwater just had this thought in his mind when the lightning had already shot out. Blackwater quickly turned around and swung his dagger to block it. A mage's spell could indeed be destroyed by physical attacks. Even if it couldn't completely destroy it, it could at least reduce some of the damage, which was better than taking it head-on. The lightning flashed and there seemed to be the faint sound of thunder. Blackwater's dagger accurately struck the ball of light. The first thing he did was to pay attention to his HP. It had dropped, but not by much. His defense was effective. Blackwater was very pleased, but then he noticed that the moment the ball of light was shattered, it created an extremely strong repulsive force. Blackwater's people couldn't help but retreat. They were indeed retreating and not flying. Blackwater felt that his legs were still pressed against the ground, but it was as if he was wearing roller skates. What is going on? Blackwater was confused for a bit, but he suddenly remembered something as his face turned pale. He looked back and saw that the Fire Beacon City's electric wall was right in front of him. If he kept retreating like this, wouldn't he be rushing straight in? Fuck, stop for me. Blackwater roared, but no matter how hard he tried, his retreat didn't slow down at all. In his panic, he saw that Gu Fei had stopped chasing. He gently blew his palm and smilingly explained, "Lightning palm, it has a repelling effect." Blackwater gave up. No one could go against the system's settings. Stopping at this moment was futile. Blackwater didn't want to watch himself being pushed into the fire pit, so the only thing he could do was to close his eyes. 0. Blackwater's countdown finally reached its end. He opened his eyes and saw that the fog was still the same, but the street was no longer there. He had returned to the Bandit Union's courtyard. On the street, Blackwater and Fire Beacon City disappeared at the same time without a trace. Gu Fei turned around and walked to the front of the second fire wall to look at the other side. Sure enough, the running fiery coat stopped at this time. He turned around and saw a pitch-black figure standing behind the jumping flames. The fog is very thick over there, can you see clearly? Gu Fei shouted at him. Fiery coat didn't answer. Your friend was careless and rushed into your fire wall. Gu Fei said. Fiery coat didn't answer. He knew that black water couldn't have been careless, so Gu Fei must have done something. He suddenly realized that it was because he received a notification from the system. His PK value increased by 1 point. In a trance, he hoped that Gu Fei had contributed this PK point to him, but unfortunately, as soon as he turned his head, he heard Gu Fei's voice. Fiery Coat wanted nothing more than to cut Gu Fei into pieces, but he knew that his impulsiveness would only result in him being beaten to the ground again. Gritting her teeth, Rini turned around and disappeared into the mist. Ha, you think you can run away like this? It's no use. A VIP like me will immediately know where you are. Gu Fei took out his wanted license, and after admiring it for a moment, he hurried towards the wanted mission office. It would take 2 hours to erase 1 PK value. Gu Fei believed that Fiery Coat wouldn't turn himself in and go to jail. Even if Fiery Coat wanted to erase his PK value, Fiery Coat wouldn't be 1 step ahead of Gu Fei. Gu Fei arrived at the wanted office in the blink of an eye. He showed the NPC his wanted license and began to browse through the quests. Fiery Coat had just used PK value for a while, and his PK value was 1 again. Gu Fei flipped to the last page and started searching. If there was no PK value, it could only mean that these guys were not registered in Xiaoyu City. The result was gratifying. When Gu Fei flipped to the second last page, he saw Fiery Coat's name. Profession, Mage. After confirming that there was no PK value, Gu Fei accepted the PK without hesitation. Coordinates XXX. Gu Fei announced in the mercenary channel. What's that? The others asked. Fiery Coat's coordinates, Gu Fei answered. You met him. Just kill him. Why did you send the coordinates? The others asked. Jiannan is my ultimate target. Fiery Coat is now my spy, Gu Fei said. You convinced him to betray you. The others were in disbelief. Gu Fei was good at inflicting physical damage. Was he an expert in hypnosis, too? So, Gu Fei gave them an introduction to the wanted license and how he had made the flaming shirt gain PK value. Jiannan is dead for sure this time, the others exclaimed. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.